Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Soul Chess in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 11, Lelich's Zanpakuto. Lelich's POV. I woke up, yawned and stretched. I hadn't had a good night's sleep like that one in a while. It's been about 2 years since I joined the 2nd Division. I haven't had that recurring nightmare of mine in a while, and 3 weeks ago a new captain was appointed to lead the 3rd Division. His name is Odoribashi Rajuro. The captains call him Rose for short. I get most of my daily news from the Siratai communication. The rest of it comes from whatever gossip I can squeeze out of Yoriyuki or Urahara-san. He gave me permission to address him less formally. Urahara-san and Yoriyuki both have a lackadaisical attitude about them, but that doesn't stop them from doing their job, or doing it properly despite what So-iPhone-senpai might think. I haven't heard from Yuna in the time I've been here either, save that first night. Either she's too busy to write, or she doesn't want me involved in any danger. Perhaps it's for the best. Speaking of being too busy, Urahara-san is always saying how he and I should have a friendly game of chess, but he always seems to be busy with something, or fast asleep, every time a good opportunity for me arises. I check my desk for finished paperwork before heading out the door, fasten my Zanpakuto to my waist, and walk out. Every morning I get into the habit of examining the squad bulletin board for assignments. The board is organized by seat number. Any division member can take any assignment of his or her rank, or up to 3 ranks below or 1 rank above. Or they can assign a lower seated member that is 4 or 5 ranks below them an assignment, or go on an assignment 2 ranks above them with their direct superior and only by permission of their direct superior's direct superior. In the time I've been here, only 2 particular assignments ever caught my eye for my rank. A lot of the assignments tend to go to the 11th, 10th, and 9th seats. Today there was nothing of particular interest, so I stopped by my second destination of the day, the box office. Despite showing little to none herself, Yoriyuki had a very organized box office to give the proper division members and seated officers the proper paperwork. I got cut a break with a short line only to find out that I didn't have any paperwork assigned to me at all today. I asked 3 times to make certain that there wasn't an error or something similar. I walked out of the box office now at a loss with what to do. Normally I'd receive my paperwork, do it, get something to eat, check up on Naomi to make sure she was doing her job, get a copy of the daily news, read it, and by that time it was usually the middle of the afternoon and I'd spend time until evening enhancing my physical fitness, practicing Keto, and getting better at Shunpo. I then realized I had a golden opportunity for something I had wanted to attempt, but never had the time or the energy to do in 2 years. I went back to my dorm, sat down outside it, just to make sure nothing got trashed inside, and withdrew my Zanpakuto from its sheath. I looked at the blade, seeing my eyes reflected in the metal. It's either now or never, I told myself. I sat down and folded my Zanpakuto across my lap. I emptied my mind of thoughts and focused on breathing until I could do nothing except let my mind freely wander. I wasn't sure what to expect. Every time, up until Akari Teiko's death, that I had tried to enter my inner world, all I would get is a montage of memories and then be thrust awake. I had never seen my inner world or my Zanpakuto before. I was determined to enter this time. I could feel my eyes wanting to open. I blinked a few times. My surroundings were not that of the division grounds. Beneath me the floor was mapped out like a chessboard, and all around me were pillars, and there were giant chess pieces, as tall as skyscrapers, surrounding me. They were not in their starting spots, but rather scattered about the area. I could tell because I was standing next to a white knight, and 2 squares away to my right was a black pawn. This was my inner world. I was in. So you've finally come. I heard a voice echo from behind me. I turned around. A figure began to march forward, but it was too far away for me to make it out. It began to draw closer until I could see who it was. My eyes widened when I recognized the figure. No, that's impossible. Standing before me was Zero, but I'm Zero. Well, Suzaku's Zero now, but even so. Now how is it impossible? Zero asked me. There are only 2 people who should be here, my Zanpakuto spirit and me. You are obviously neither. Who are you? I demanded to know. Zero chuckled to himself. Didn't you once say that Zero was a symbol, not a being? My identity is void. I am not a man or machine, nor something in between. I am not even alive. I am inside your head. What am I? Don't play games with me. I grit my teeth. Oh, come now, Lelich 6 Britannia, play along. You normally love riddles. Zero chuckled. I grunted and decided to play along for now. You're an idea. Zero clapped slowly. Very good. Here's another. I have no limit, no beginning, and no end. I exist in all beings, but I vary size. What am I? I took a moment to think and then answered. Knowledge. That's 2 for 2. One more. I have no body, but I take a form. I am not dead, but I've been born. Some claim to see me, some actually can. This riddle is over. Now name what I am. The answer is simple. You're a spirit. I answered. That's right. Zero took a few steps forward. I believe the time has come at last. Zero reached up and spread apart the uniform's cape, revealing the outfit to be red, not blue as I had worn it. To discard my mask. Zero's fingertips touched the visor on the uniform's helmet. So that you can see. Zero began to remove the helmet. Zero's voice became the voice I had always heard my Zanpakuto speak in as she said. My true identity. A bright light flashed. When it died down, my Zanpakuto spirit stood before me. She was still wearing an outfit similar to my Zero outfit, but it was clay red, not royal blue. She was holding the helmet under her arm. Her hair was styled similar to C.C's, but her hair was strawberry red. I could see the color of her eyes, they were olive green. So tell me, what was the point of all that? I asked. To test you. She told me. I had to make sure you were still as clever as you always have been. You still don't think I've awoken, do you? You still don't trust me? I said. Now that is a rude thing to say. My Zanpakuto replied. When did I ever say that I did not trust you? Then tell me your name. I said. As you wish. I am a high-pitched tone, like a high-frequency tuning fork cranked up to a really high volume sounded through the area, drowning out my Zanpakuto's words when she said her name. As I figured. I can't hear you say your name. I said. Why is that my fault? She asked. As I recall from your readings, it is the Soul Reaper's fault if they can't hear the name of their Zanpakuto. I thought all I had to do was realize who I truly am. I said, getting irritated. You do, but you have yet to do that. As I told you before, one instance of using the geese to speed up the process of gaining honor for your captain is not enough. It's a step in the right direction, but it's not enough. My Zanpakuto responded. Why are you pushing me in that direction? I demanded to know. Who says I'm pushing you? She asked. I mocked her. Use geese. Remember who you are. They're just words, Lelich. It's your choice whether or not to listen to them. My Zanpakuto said, now staring up at the non-existent ceiling above us and playing catch with her helmet. Then let's try this from a different angle. Do you know why I can't hear your name? I asked. She stopped playing catch and looked directly at me. I do. She answered. There was a pause. I hate word games. I thought. What is the reason, or are the reasons why I can't hear your name? I asked. A question for a question, an answer for an answer. She replied. What? I asked. It's a game, Lelich, or don't you like games? She asked. So now we're playing a game. I asked. What happened to the answer to my question? I think if you play this game to get the answers to your questions, it's much more fun, don't you think? She asked. Why is she replying in questions every time? Wait, what did she say earlier? A question for a question, an answer for an answer? I thought about this for a minute to understand the rules of her little game. No, I don't, so will you answer my question earlier? A pity. Now which question was that again? She replied. What is the reason, or are the reasons why I can't hear your name? Lelich, did you enjoy being manipulative and underhanded when you masqueraded in this outfit that I wear? What do you think? I turned the question on her. I think you enjoyed it, don't you agree? She asked. I was growing rather wearing of this guessing game. No, I don't agree. What does that have to do with anything? I beg to differ, and I believe it was you who wanted to know why you couldn't hear my name. Yes. True, but, wait, are you saying that my alleged denial of enjoying being manipulative and wanting to atone because of all the blood I put on my hands to give the world peace is causing the problem? And that if I don't admit to who I am that I'll never learn your name? That is exactly it. If you don't, you may never. So I ask you, Lelich, why did you become Zero? Why did you attempt to liberate Britannia with an army? What was your purpose? Didn't you say it was fun? I smirked. Those are a lot of questions, you'd better have some answers. My Zanpakuto clapped. Catching me with my own rules. You are still in there somewhere, it seems. What is that supposed to mean? What did it sound like? She replied. Are we still playing this stupid game? I growled. What do you think? She giggled. I growled. How do we end this game? Have you received your answers? I glared. She laughed. If I say yes, will this annoying game stop and can we talk normally? Oh, have it your way, you're no fun. She pouted. Considering she gave an answer to my question, I could safely assume this game of hers was over. She looked at me seriously. Lelich, I want you to think for a moment. What about? When you used geese on those guards to get into the 3rd division, didn't you feel power rising within you? Didn't you feel a sensation coursing through you? She asked. I recalled the event. Now that you mention it, I do recall feeling much more powerful than usual. I was able to stop that squad member's attack with my bare hands. I had complete control of my Ryotsu. I look how I am because I am a reflection of your memory and history. When you were Zero, you enjoyed what you were doing, you felt like you were a hero to the Black Knights up until they found out what they believed you were all about. My Zanpakuto said to me. If you hadn't believed Nunnally dead, what would you have done differently when they called you out? What does any of this matter? My past is over. I'm starting anew. Can you? You were the one who came here to stop monsters, but without me you cannot rise to become a captain. My Zanpakuto replied. Hashima was corrupt. He needed to be put down. I defended. And you don't. There are other people who are similar. You have already taken notice of some of the Soul Society's rather black and white policies. You want to change them, but you lack the power to change. It's okay to try and rise in rank and change the system from within like your friend, but you won't succeed if you play by his rules. The Lelich 6 Britannia that lived played by his own rules. He manipulated every situation so that no matter what happened he won. Lelich 6 Britannia is dead. I shouted. And there it is out in the open. My Zanpakuto sighed. Sure, maybe if I hadn't thought Nunnally was dead things may not have turned out like this. I would have never resorted to Zero Requiem and a lot of good people might still be alive. Including you, right? My Zanpakuto asked. I just sneered. I cannot change the past. I said. The only thing I can do is move forward and create a new future. I have always strived for the future. You were obviously there when I said that little speech. My father wanted the past, Schneeisel wanted the present, but I want the future. I do remember, but are you okay with the future you are headed toward? My Zanpakuto wanted to know. Bowing to authority? Going through the motions? Isn't that what geese helped you escape? You don't want to admit that I'm right, do you? I can see it in your eyes. I cannot talk to you if you still deny who you are. I conceded to her points. I do not deny who I am. However, there's no enemy to hold my attention. I don't know who I'm supposed to be fighting. Treva is being dealt with as we converse and he's outside my league. Even if I were to corner him, his Shikai could stop me in my tracks. Even if that weren't the case, you saw what happened with Vanguard. I was nearly killed. You're already dead. You know what I mean. I said irritably. My Zanpakuto folded her arms. Maybe I'm not meant to know your name yet. The Godiai's system is a lot less screwed up than Britannia. There's not much to change. The only enemies are the obvious ones. Perhaps my confusion is also part of the reason I have not learned your name. My Zanpakuto nodded. Yes, now you understand. And I believe you may find your enemy soon. When you are young you go looking for every fight you can, when you mature the good opponents come looking for you. I recited the old proverb. Something like that. After the reply everything began to fade. Wait, I have one more question, why is it so foggy in my inner world? I can't see the whole chessboard. My vision blacked out, but I could still hear my Zanpakuto. As you rise to the top you will see more of the board, and as your goal becomes clearer the fog will lift. I opened my eyes. I was outside where I had sat down. I let out a small smile and sheathed my sword. I spent enough time with it today and I learned some important information. For now, I'd just have to wait. 5 months later. Winter was upon us. It had snowed the day before. I was currently sitting in the dining hall with some hot soup with a cloak wrapped around me. Ah, there's my favorite low-seat genius. A friendly voice called out as Urahara-san sat down in front of me. Something you need? I asked as I sipped a spoonful of my soup. He put a case on the table. I think it's about time we put an end to our little waiting game. Waiting game. He opened the case, revealing a chessboard with pieces. What do you say? You wanna play? I put down my spoon and set my bowl aside. Fine, but I'm black. I said. Urahara-san and I set up the board and got down to playing. So, he said, why do you always play black? If the enemy takes initiative I have the ability to respond and counter-attack, I said, whereas I'd be rushing headlong into enemy territory without a plan the other way around. You seem to take the game very seriously. Urahara-san said with a friendly smile. Of course I do. I said. I moved my king. You're moving your king rather early. Urahara-san said. If the king does not move into battle, his men won't follow. I told Urahara-san like I had told so many others. Did you pull this stunt with Aizen and still win? Urahara-san asked me. Why don't you keep playing and find out? I asked. The game continued to progress steadily, but all throughout I never felt like I ever had advantage of the board, but at the same time I never thought Urahara-san had the advantage either. This man, despite being a rank lower than Aizen, was at a level of tactics, strategy, and intelligence far beyond aforementioned vice-captain. After several more turns both of us were out of pawns, my king was in the right-hand corner of my side of the board and Urahara-san's king was in the center of the board. I still had my queen, a knight, and a rook. Urahara-san still had both his bishops and both his knights. It was his turn. Check. Urahara-san passed one of his bishops directly in front of my king. I took it with my king. Check. He checked my king again with his knight. I moved my king out of the way. Check. I was under fire from his other bishop now. I moved my king again. Urahara-san moved his knight so that I couldn't take his bishop with my king. Check. I checked Urahara-san with my rook. He moved his king to the side. I moved my knight. Check. Urahara-san moved his king back towards his side of the board. I moved my queen so that it was adjacent to both Urahara-san's king and my own knight. Check. He moved his king away. I pressed the attack with my knight. He sidestepped again. I put my king at Urahara-san's end of the board. There was only one move Urahara-san could make. After he did I moved my rook to a spot that completely prevented Urahara-san from moving his king, but he didn't have to. He wasn't in check. Urahara-san checked my king with his knight, delaying the inevitable an extra turn. I moved my king so that it was adjacent to Urahara-san's bishop and knight, but in check by neither. Urahara-san moved his knight that was completely uninvolved in either skirmish. He was betting that I'd leave his bishop alive, which I could take with my king with no repercussions, but I was determined to win, not draw. I moved my knight to put Urahara's king in check. He could only do one move with his king. After he did it I moved my queen diagonally one space to check him. Once again Urahara-san only had one move to make and I cut off all his escape routes with my rook. And that, I believe, is checkmate. I grinned. It is indeed. I concede Lelich, You are indeed the chess master here. Urahara-san said. Keep that level of ability where it's at or even improve upon it and you'll do great things for the Soul Society. Thanks for the compliment. I accepted his words. So what now? Do I get a prize of some sort for beating both you and Aizen? I joked. I wish. Urahara-san responded. It's not every day a low-seat member is able to beat division members within the top 3 seats of the GOTY I-13. Aizen and I have only ever lost to each other. Even Captains Yuka-take, the head captain and Captain Kukaki have been beaten by us each and every time. You and Aizen have played the head captain. I asked. When you get to be a high-rank officer you generally get invited to noble gatherings. Aizen and I both challenged the old man at one of the Shihoan family gatherings. The captain commander nearly lost his temper, he was beaten so many times. Urahara-san replied. And I beat both of you. I commented. Hey, it could be beginner's luck, but who knows? If you do it consistently you might be regarded as the most brilliant mind in all of Soul Society. Urahara-san told me. I laughed smugly at the thought. Of course the chess game wasn't the only reason I came down here. Urahara-san put a small stack of documents on the table. What are these? I asked. Take a look at, you'll find out. Urahara-san told me. I read it over. They were assignment papers. I was being asked to take a teaching job in the academy for first-year Kido students. I was surprised. I thought teaching positions were only given to seated officers with rank 15 or higher. Yuriyuki sent me down here with those and the chessboard. She said that if you proved to have the capacity to beat me in chess that she'd take a chance and give you the opportunity to teach. You've got potential, Lelich, plus you graduated at the top of your class in Kido. If your physical strength and stamina were a little more stable you'd be climbing ranks easily. Urahara-san told me. Do this and see how it goes. If you do well, maybe Yuriyuki gives you a higher teaching position or higher rank. What does So-iPhone Senpai think of this? I asked. Why does her opinion matter? Urahara-san wanted to know. She's Yuriyuki's second and always breathing down her neck, wanting what's best for Yuriyuki and the squad. I was only curious if she put up a fight with Yuriyuki giving me this position. I stated. I had to know exactly how much was expected of me. This was highly irregular to give someone of my seat a teaching position, high intellect, or no. Maybe you should go ask her. Urahara-san suggested. Don't joke around. I said punctually. For once I'm actually being serious. I really have no idea what So-iPhone thinks of this. If you want her opinion you should ask her. Urahara-san said. I suppose I will then. I got to my feet only for my stomach to growl. I sat back down. Of course I think I'll finish my soup first. 20 minutes later. After finishing eating and bidding goodbye to Urahara-san I asked for directions to So-iPhone Senpai's office or dorm or if anyone had seen her. I finally found myself standing in front of a hovel relatively close to the large building that housed the captain's office and bedroom and the squad meeting room. That sort of figures. I said to myself. I walked up to the door and knocked. There was no response. I counted to 10 slowly before knocking again. All right, hold on a second. I heard complaining from behind the door. The door slid open revealing So-iPhone Senpai. Oh, it's you, Lelich. She folded her arms. Something I can help you with? Yeah, I was curious. Did you happen to know Yuriyuki was considering giving me a teaching position? I told her. Of course I know about it. To be honest I think your rank is just a number. It doesn't matter your rank. Some people aren't meant to teach. She said. It'll be up to you to prove whether you can or not. Your records suggest you have the potential, but your actions will determine if you have the ability. So in other words you really have no objection to this. I stated in confirmation. No, but allow me to say this. She said and then got bitter. Yuriyuki-sama is counting on you. She has every bit of faith that you can do this. If you prove her wrong, so help me you won't like what's in store for you from me if you fail. Nice to know her dedication to her captain hasn't waned. I smirked. What's so funny? So iPhone Senpai snapped. Nothing, I responded, I was just thinking about how dedicated you are to the captain. Yuriuki did an excellent job in picking the captain of her guard. Speaking of which, where is she? Normally I'd expect to find you at her back. Can you keep a secret? So iPhone asked. Her cheeks were flushed. Depends, who do I have to keep it from? I asked. Everyone, but most importantly Yuriuki-sama. She responded. All right, fire away. I said. Well, Yuriuki-sama's birthday is coming up and well, I don't know what to get her this year. So iPhone Senpai tapped her fingers together. I see, trying to keep your gift hunting efforts a secret. I can sympathize with that. I responded. I recalled the few times I kept secrets of a similar nature from Nunnally. Well, as long as you're here, and considering your teaching position doesn't start until the spring season, I have a favor to ask, no more like an order. There's no arguing with her. I know that much. What do you want me to do? I asked. While I'm out, gift shopping, please keep an eye on Yuriuki-sama for me. She requested. In other words, you want me to your job of watching out for her basically. I said. Exactly, bring your paperwork with you wherever you go, make sure she doesn't leave your sight, and if she asks you to stop following her, tell her I told you to do it and that I'm on a secret assignment of great importance for her. So iPhone said, getting passionate about all of this. And what do I get in return, besides the fact that you're higher up than me, what exactly do I get for helping you out? I asked. Bargaining, I like. Quiet. I ordered. Isn't my gratitude enough? So iPhone snapped. You be the judge of that. Ask yourself how much this means to you and put yourself in my shoes. I told her. So iPhone Senpai started to speak but swallowed. I will think of something, for now can you please just do this, please? So iPhone Senpai looked like she might cry, get mad or attack me if I kept messing around, and I wanted to stay on my captain's good side. All right then. A deal's a deal. Shake on it. I asked. Fine. So iPhone responded and we shook hands. Right then, I said, let me just check up on Naomi and I'll get right to work on this. Please don't take too long. Yuriuki-sama is in a captain's meeting and she'll be back soon. Don't worry. I'll take care of it. You just do what you need to do. I told So iPhone Senpai. Very well. I left So iPhone Senpai and went to check up on Naomi. I knocked loudly on her dorm room. Naomi slid the door open in haste. Yeah. She was completely disoriented. She saw me and stood at attention. Senpai, you're early. Something's come up. I told her. That's not a problem, I hope. And no, and not at all, please come in. Naomi led me inside. She seemed nervous. I took a look around her office and went over to her desk. Her paperwork was a mess on her table. I'm not done with that yet. I will be soon. You can come by later, perhaps this evening. I didn't respond and just kept moving about the room. I took notice of a half-eaten sandwich. I'm going to finish that. My eyes touched upon a scrap of paper lying on the floor. I went to pick up, but Naomi dove for it, grabbed it and turned to face me. Trying to hide something from me? I asked, folding my arms. You can't look at this, senpai. Naomi declared, gripping the corners of it and holding it to her chest. Now able to get a clear look at the back, I could see the texture and shape and was almost certain that she was holding a black and white photograph. I extended one arm out. Naomi, give me the photo. Don't make me write you up. No. Naomi backed away from me. Naomi, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. I folded my arms again. You want it? She took the photo and stuffed it down her shirt. Then go ahead and take it. I rolled my shoulders and let out a deep sigh. If she was that desperate to hide whatever it was, I didn't need make a big fuss about it. Fine, have it your way. I told her. I'll come back later this evening to get the paperwork. Make sure it's ready by then. I left her room and headed for Yuriuki's office/dorm. Don't you think that was potentially worth investigating? My Zanpakuto asked. I've known Naomi long enough to know that that's not contraband or incriminating. It could be a potentially embarrassing photo. I mean, I did show up rather early. I defended my decision. You've really lost your edge. I thought our talk a few months ago would have spurred you to be more ruthless. My Zanpakuto sighed. I see no rhyme or reason to start manipulating people. Manipulation is what lost me so much trust at the very end. If I can gain trust through returned trust, I'll be much better off. Keep that up and I might just disappear for a while again. You know, to be honest, I sort of liked it better when you weren't breathing down my neck constantly. Humph. I dropped communication and made it to Yuriuki's office. I knocked once. Come in. I recognized Yuriuki's voice. I opened the door and walked inside. Oh Lelich, it's you. I wasn't expecting to see you. You haven't seen So iPhone, have you? That's sort of the reason I'm here. I told her as I stood at attention. So iPhone senpai's working on a special assignment for your benefit and she asked me to substitute for her job with keeping a watchful eye on you. Yuriuki donned a playful smile. Did she now? Do you want to ask her yourself? I asked with the same smile. Yuriuki turned her head to the side and held up her hand, shaking it. Nah, it's fine. Having a change out of the usual is good once in a while. Well, here I am, go ahead and do whatever. Ah, right. I walked farther into the assembly hall and sat nearby Yuriuki, but not so much that I was invading her personal space. She could draw her Zanpakuto if she felt like it, and it would reach me if she pointed it in my direction. Don't you have something to do? She asked. I get all my paperwork done before I eat. I responded. Well then, have fun sitting there till sundown. Yuriuki teased. I growled underneath my breath. How does So iPhone put up with this? Then again, this is the perfect opportunity to get to know my captain better. Say, Yuriuki, since we have this opportunity, we could always talk and get to know each other a little better. Well, I suppose that's better than sitting here in silence for the next few hours, Yuriuki chuckled. Normally So iPhone just sits there quiet as a mouse and either does her paperwork or sketches. Funny thing is, she never shows me what she draws. I can only imagine what she might draw from this position, Yuriuki. I said to myself. Yuriuki and I spent the next few hours talking to each other over various topics. I let her speak more than me. It was the gentlemanly thing to do, and I was in no way, shape or form ready to trust anyone, not even Yuna, with my past. I learned a lot about the Shihoan family, about Yuriuki's childhood and about her friendship with Akari Teiko. It was a rather pleasant chat. We talked for so long we completely lost track of time. It was when the moon shone into the room and Yuriuki yawned that we finally decided to end the conversation. Same time tomorrow? She asked. Well, I'll probably bring my paperwork and follow you to eat tomorrow unless So iPhone's done with her special assignment. I told her. Sounds like a plan, thanks for the chat, Lelich. Yuriuki told me. No, thank you. I told her. I made for the door and bowed low. Good night. Good night. She told me. We parted ways. I went back to Naomi's office and got the paperwork from her, and then, as I walked back to my dorm, scanned through it. I had to sign off on both documents and deliver one of them to Armika May in 13th Division. Simple enough. I noted. I got back to my room and signed both documents before putting them in the outbox on my desk. I threw an extra blanket on my bed, settled down and went to sleep. Chapter 12, Lelich Revered? Lelich's Dream. I was having that god-awful nightmare again. However, this time it advanced a little further. The attacking hollow evaded the first strike and I got a good look at the Soul Reaper that was attacking it. The hollow's attacker was me, but not as I am now. I was wearing a captain's Haori. It fluttered in the breeze. I didn't see the kanji on the back of it or the underlying color that would indicate which captain I was. Colin looked confused. I didn't know if it was because she was wondering how she was suddenly able to breathe again or if seeing me startled her. It was a dream, so anything was possible. I didn't have time to ponder on such things. Asked Captain version of myself disappeared as if using Shunpo. Before anything else happened, my eyes flew open and I found myself lying on my back in my room. I wasn't panicked like I normally had been, but my heart was beating fast. I pondered why I was a captain. Or why, if that was me, why wasn't I seeing through my Soul Reaper self's eyes? This dream was starting to make less and less sense the more it progressed. I shook my head, not wanting to think on such things. I gathered my paperwork and stopped by the box office to pick up any new work and headed to Yuriuki's office on So-iPhone's behalf, as I had done for over a week and a couple of days now. I arrived at the captain's den, as Yuriuki referred to it as, and took my seat with my paperwork. Yuriuki was fast asleep in her seat. I didn't bother to wake her and just did my work. To be truthfully honest, I didn't think women could snore as loud as she could. After getting halfway through my work, Yuriuki finally woke up. She noticed me after yawning and said, "Oh Lelich, when did you get here?" she asked. "You were asleep when I got here," I responded as I worked. "For how long I have no idea." She changed the subject without any warning. "Say Lelich, do you have any idea what today and tomorrow are?" Yuriuki asked me. I scratched my head. "Not really, no. I haven't been counting days in significance. I just know by the weather changes how long it's been," I answered. "Ah yeah, I suppose you wouldn't know, you normally don't care about such things," Yuriuki said, possibly thinking aloud. "Today is Kisk's birthday. Tomorrow's mine. You two have back-to-back birthdays?" I asked. "Yup," Yuriuki responded. "So since you two are such close friends, did you get him anything?" I asked. "Sent it to him last night, in fact." "Wait, when did you get it?" I asked. "I've been watching you this whole time for the past 9 days. I've had it since a month ago," Yuriuki said, rubbing her knuckles on the side of her shoulder before examining her nails. "A good friend is prepared for such things. Does So-iPhone normally get you a gift for your birthday?" I wanted to know, even though I already knew the answer. Yuriuki began counting. "My birthday, the day we first conversed, the day I became captain, the day I appointed her captain of my guard, and the day she saw me for the very first time. All that, and she can't take a hint that So-iPhone's devotion to her is kind of obsessive?" I was having trouble believing that Yuriuki didn't think that So-iPhone thought of her as a little more than just a superior officer. "Just out of curiosity, what did she get you last year?" I asked. "Same thing she's been giving me for the longest time now, a box of milk chocolates," Yuriuki answered. "Chocolates?" I asked. "Yup. Caramel filled. And they're delicious. Something tells me she might try something different this time," Yuriuki commented. "Oh, why do you think that?" I asked. "Oh, just a hunch." She winked. I finished my paperwork and sat there with it. I didn't know what I could possibly talk to Yuriuki about, so I looked around the room, counting floorboards. After some time went by, Yuriuki fell asleep again. "She sure can snore," I thought to myself. Some more time went by and the door slid open, revealing Urahara-san. "Yuriuki, you here?" he asked. Yuriuki woke up from what should have been a heavy sleep on a dime. "Oh Kisuke, did you get my present?" "I sure did." He grinned. "Thanks, I appreciate it. I hope it'll come in handy." Yuriuki smiled at him. "It's just the sort of thing I've been looking for. It never ceases to amaze me the kind of things you can get with the money you earn." He laughed. "It wasn't all that expense really," Yuriuki commented. "Oh please, nothing's expensive to you and you know it," Urahara-san joked. Yuriuki laughed. "I suppose so. Anyway, mind if I ask what Lelich is doing here?" Urahara-san asked. "Something tells me So-iPhone asked him to watch me while she goes out searching for present for me for tomorrow," Yuriuki said. "Which reminds me, you have something for me, right?" "I sure do. You'll get it tomorrow. Even if you gave me a direct order, My duties come first. Urahara-san replied. Such a shame. Yuriuki sighed and stood up and stretched. Hey Lelich, as long as you're supposed to be tailing me, walk with me. I want to introduce you to one of your future students. Wait, how do you know a future academy student? I asked. He's the grandson of one of the captains. Yuriuki told me. I'm bored and paying him a visit is always fun. Very well, lead the way then. I responded. Kukaki Manor. So what's the student's name? I asked. I mean, judging from where we are, I know who he has to be related to, but... Yuriuki chuckled to herself. His name's Kukaki Byakuya. I'll introduce you when we see him. I followed Yuriuki to the family courtyard. There was a kid practicing with a wooden sword, wearing the traditional aquamarine family garments. He had black hair tied into a ponytail by a red hair tie. Yuriuki had her and me watch from a distance as the kid practiced his swings. He then held the sword parallel to the ground with both hands and raised it up so that it was on equal altitude with his shoulder. He scanned the courtyard as if watching for an invisible target before stabbing forward with his sword, turning his wrists and spinning in a perfect counterclockwise 360-degree angle and striking again, backing up as he delivered the final strike. Yuriuki walked forward with her arms folded while addressing the child. The scorpion sting followed up with a reverse counter and two-handed swing. I see your technique has improved, Byakuya. So that's him, is it? I asked. And just what the hell do you want, Shihoin Yuriuki? He scowled at her. Now is that any way to greet an old friend? She asked. Just because you know my grandfather does not make us friends, nor does it give you the right to prance around my manor like you're the queen. He shouted. Well, she certainly rubbed him the wrong way. Ah, what's the matter, Byakuya? Still mad that you've lost so many games of tag you can't count it on your fingers anymore? Yuriuki teased. Shut up. Byakuya swung at Yuriuki with his weapon. Yuriuki dodged to the side with ease and, moving so fast my eyes couldn't keep up, took Byakuya's sword and used it to connect his hair tie to the sash around his waist. It was rather childish for a captain to behave. Byakuya fell over to the ground and managed to get untangled. To say he was aggravated wouldn't have been strong enough to describe what he was feeling. Yuriuki laughed as if this was some sort of game to her. Even I had to admit it was kind of entertaining. Byakuya finally took notice of me. And who are you? He asked me. Lamperouge Lelich. I responded. I'm going to be your Kido instructor for your first year while you're at the Shino Academy. Yuriuki tells me you're entering it this year. You know her. It was easy to tell he wasn't fond of her. I'm her 18th seat. I responded. What kind of joke are you pulling now? He looked, or rather glared at Yuriuki. Academy teachers are only 15th seats and above. I'm entering, so you're doing everything you can to mess with me. Is that it? Take a closer look at his vest, Byakuya. Yuriuki responded. Grudgingly, Byakuya looked at my specially crafted vest that I earned from graduating at the top of my class in Kido. That's the special Kido vest given to the student who graduates in Kido at the top of the class. It sure is. Yuriuki commented. Lelich is rather gifted with Kido. From what I heard, he can whip out a pretty powerful Sorin Sakasui and a devastating Seijo Sabaku and Tsuzuri Raiden combo. Yuriuki's just my captain. I told Byakuya. You don't have to worry about me pulling her antics. Maybe you should once in a while, just to give him a listen in humility. Yuriuki joked. And as long as we're here, how about a free lesson on the house, Byakuya? I've had enough of your shunpo races. Thanks but no thanks. Byakuya shouted. He can already do shunpo? The nobles of the Soul Society must be as gifted as I've read. Hold on a second, Yuriuki. What happened to, we can't give you an unfair advantage? I recalled what was said to me all those years ago when I met her for the first time. The Kukaki clan is one of the 4 great noble houses. Members of the house are recruited into the academy differently than other individuals. Almost all nobles, but especially members of the 4 great noble families, are checked annually, once they come of age, to see if they have the spiritual power to become soul reapers. Some nobles decline. Some, like Byakuya here, are eager to become soul reapers. Once they are proven to have spiritual power, tutors are sent to teach them in soul reaper arts to see if they have the potential to learn them at all. It saves the house embarrassment if the child goes into the academy only to find out they don't have the capability to become a soul reaper. They still have to take the entrance exam like all the other potential candidates, but they have a much higher success rate. Well, as long as they're not bypassing the laws just because of their birth. That's not fair to those who actually have to work to become soul reapers, I stated. And if it were, then that would just be how the world works. Byakuya said. The Soul Society's laws are sacred. Don't you think some policies need to change though? I asked. If they change, then they change, but choosing to break the laws to change them is the path of a criminal, or at least that's what I believe. Nothing comes of rebellion. If you have to break the law to show they need to change, you'll only wind up failing in the end. That is not true, I shouted. I suppose a Rokanga civilian such as yourself would think that. Byakuya responded. All right, you two, let's try to get along. Yuriyuki mediated. Byakuya didn't say anything. He just turned his head. There was a period of silence until I broke it. Those with power tend to abuse it. They use the law to protect them and hide behind it as a means to get around it. They create their own laws into the system to advantage them and become tyrants. I'm not the sort of person that can condone such a system. I won't condone any matter of the strong devouring the weak. Byakuya responded to my philosophy. Tyrants are born when their rivals are too weak to keep them from overpowering them. I agree with you to a degree, but I'd rather become strong. I will become so strong that a tyrant cannot be born. No man, woman, or beast will be able to overtake the law because I will use the law to stop them. And what about the ones who are already securely safe? I asked. Even the most powerful tyrants slip up eventually, and when they do they'll be taken down. Byakuya responded. So you'd stand by and watch innocent people get hurt? You'd tell them, sorry you have to die today, but the law prevents me from acting, ... No. Those who are secure now I cannot act upon. I am too weak and I curse my weakness. I will become strong. No tyrant will hide behind the law on my watch. Laws are sacred and meant to be followed, not abused, and twisted for one's own selfish purposes, and definitely not to be broken. That is what I believe. Byakuya and I stared at each other with menacing glares, neither of us blinking. As I stared at him I could see that he meant what he said. If he grew up and became like he said, he'd make for a very potent ally. I smirked. I think you and I are going to get along just fine, Byakuya. Now how about that lesson? I asked. Does she have to watch? Byakuya grumbled. Well, I have to keep an eye on her, so if she leaves, I have to. I said. I'll be quiet. Yuriyuki said, though her expression said otherwise. Yes, and then you'll break out into laughter when I screw up. Byakuya said. Then don't screw up. I told him. Now then, I looked around. The courtyard should provide ample space, but just to keep damage to a minimum, I pointed to a tree. Yuriyuki, could you observe from there? I asked. She made it to the tree in one shunpo. Show off. Byakuya grumbled. Pay her no mind and pay attention to me, I said, acting like a teacher. Now then, I don't have a practice target, so I'm just going to have to use Bakudo 81 as a shield. I'm going to teach you Heido 29 Yogan Ono. Lava Axe, first a demonstration. I looked over at Yuriyuki. Can you deflect a low-level Kido? I asked. Lelouch, I'm a captain, that's easy. She bragged. All right then, I said. Watch carefully, I told Byakuya. I stood with no required position for my feet, but I found standing with them somewhat apart from each other worked best for me. I spaced my hands apart a few inches from each other and angled my palms towards each other at about 45 degrees, fingers spread apart. The Kido was at its optimum efficiency at a perfect 46.3 degree angle, but of course that's hard to eyeball. I gathered spirit energy in my palms and chanted. Yeah, Lord. Mask of bones and blood, yeah, who turns life to ash. My palms glowed with fiery energy. With your anger, form a blade encased in your wrath. A small cylinder made of red-orange spirit energy began to form in the center of the space between my open palms and rotated in place. Complete it to honor your fury. Hado 29, Yogan Ono. The cylinder took the shape of a double-sided, short axe. I rolled my wrists forward before rolling my shoulders and my wrists in rhythm with each other and bent my elbows back a bit before giving a forceful flick of both my wrists and released the spirit energy I was subduing to prepare the spell and launched the axe at Yoryuki. As I would consider typical of her, she stopped it with one finger. It only showed just how much more powerful she was than me. Okay, so I need to emulate that, right? Byakuya asked. Well, it's hard to control. I rubbed my head as I answered. Most people don't get Kido right the first time. When my class was taught Hado 29 for the first time, a lot of people would miss the targets, screw up the incantation, or fail to execute the attack properly. I'm not asking you to master this technique in one day. If you can successfully launch the Kido 3 times in a row, or if I have to leave, we'll consider this lesson completed. I will prove my abilities as a Soul Reaper, Lamperouge-sensei. Byakuya said. There was a passion in his eyes I hadn't seen in him up until now. He seemed determined to do as I instructed, but passion can only get you so far. I stood at a safe distance and watched Byakuya emulate my stance and practice the incantation. He got the incantation right, even though I had only said it once. He was fine up until the execution. When he tried to launch it, his joints were far too rigid and the axe, instead of spiraling, wound up flying off in a random like a projectile. Yoryuki stopped it from hitting anything. He wasn't pleased with the failure. Hey, calm down. I instructed sternly. If you don't remain calm, you can't do this properly. The fact that you got the incantation right on the first try and managed to unleash the attack is something, but it wasn't a proper execution. Your stance is too rigid. Try loosening up a little. After a few more failures, I helped Byakuya practice just the motion of the execution. When I was sure he had it, we went back to actually doing the Kido. This time he got it. His accuracy definitely needed work, but he'd get better with practice. He did manage to do 3 proper executions in a row though. Nice job. I told him when he succeeded. Byakuya didn't respond to me. Instead he glanced over to where Yoryuki was standing in the tree with a disgusted glare. No, he's not really going to do that, is he? I wondered. He did. Byakuya turned to face Yoryuki and, angrily, attempted to attack her with the technique I just taught him. His anger, as anyone could have expected, got the better of him, and all he wound up doing was causing the Kido to blow up in his face and knock him down onto his back. Yoryuki began laughing hysterically. Byakuya got up and grit his teeth. One of these days I'm going to get you back, Shihoin Yoryuki. Just you wait. His outburst only caused Yoryuki to laugh harder. She lost her balance and fell out of the tree, but instead of falling and crashing to the ground, she rolled her ankles around the branch and used it to somersault towards our location and land perfectly on her feet. Nice dismount. I stated with a smile. 10 out of 10. Yoryuki chuckled. I looked up at the sky and checked the position of the sun. We should probably head back. I told Yoryuki. It's already afternoon. Why does it not surprise me you can tell time from the position of the sun? She asked rhetorically. Because unlike a certain someone, Lamperouge-sensei is actually intelligent. I didn't know whether Byakuya meant what he said or was just trying to put down Yoryuki. You know I could always recant Lelich's orders. Yoryuki said with a smirk. You wouldn't dare. Byakuya glared. Lelich must have grown on you if you'd be upset about me removing him as your teacher. I said. He's a lot better of an instructor than you are, that's for sure. Again, I didn't know if he meant that or was just trying to get back at Yoryuki for whatever she did to him. Oh Byakuya-bo, relax, just because a certain someone didn't know a certain someone's special ability had a certain interesting quality to it doesn't mean you have to get all bent out of shape. Yoryuki wagged her finger. Just what exactly happened between these two? I wondered. I bet if he knew your secret he wouldn't be as fond of you. Why am I the only one who had to witness what you pulled? Byakuya growled. Yoryuki pat his head and grinned from ear to ear. Now, Now Byakuya, there's nothing wrong with an anatomy lesson. Don't touch me. Byakuya swatted her hand away. Now I'm really curious as to what went on between the two of them. Whatever. Yoriyuki put her hands on her hips and looked off in the distance. Your dad's on his way here, so I'm sure you'll want some father-son bonding time. I guess now's as good a time as ever for Lelich and I to leave. Yes. Please. Go. Byakuya told Yoriyuki. Right, let's go, Lelich. She ordered. Yeah. I answered and looked in Byakuya's direction and waved. Nice meeting you, Byakuya. See you in a few months, sensei. Byakuya told me. As Yoriyuki and I headed back, she said. He gives you a proper goodbye, but just wants me to get gone as fast as possible? I swear he needs to learn some manners. What exactly happened between you two anyway? I asked. Yoriyuki chuckled at the memory, whatever it was. I'll tell it to you when we get back to the office. You're not going to want to be standing when I tell you the story. That's assuming So iPhone isn't finished with her special assignment, of course. Yoriyuki told me. Very well, you're the captain. I said. It seriously wasn't a point worth arguing over. I could be patient. Upon arrival back in the division, we walked back into the meeting room. To my surprise, So iPhone was sitting in her usual position. How long has she been waiting there? I wondered. Oh, So iPhone, you're back. Yoriyuki said. Finished with your special assignment. Yoriyuki-sama. So iPhone ran towards where Yoriyuki was standing. I thought she was going to grapple onto her, but instead she dropped to her knees, bowed her head and placed her knuckles firm on the ground. I have a confession to make. My special assignment, I wasn't, it was for your benefit and I. Relax, So iPhone, I know where you were. Yoriyuki told her. You did. So iPhone was confused. Of course. Yoriyuki grinned, arms folded. You have to get up pretty early in the morning to fool me. Hi. Of course, right. So iPhone bowed her head. I'm not mad. Yoriyuki told her. To be honest, Lelich has been doing a very good job substituting for you while you've been away. You made a good choice in selecting him. Why yes, well, I'm always acting in your best interest, Yoriyuki-sama. So iPhone stuttered. Well, I believe I should get back to my regularly scheduled responsibilities then. I said and turned to leave. Wait, Lelich. So iPhone senpai called out. I turned back around. There's something we need to discuss, outside. So iPhone stuttered, back on her feet. Okay, sure. I said. Please excuse me, Yoriyuki-sama, I will be back momentarily. So iPhone bowed and escorted me outside. She let me down the steps and midway between her office and Yoriyuki's den. What did you want to talk about? I asked. As you can obviously tell, I succeeded in my mission, and so, this isn't easy for me to say, but, thank you for helping me. So iPhone told me. Hey, easiest job I ever had. I'd do it again if you needed me to. I told So iPhone. So iPhone cleared her throat, turning slightly red. Anyway, I know that I have been less than charitable towards anyone save Yoriyuki-sama and, well, I was hoping. Oh, I'll just come out and say it. So iPhone raged before thrusting her arm out, fingers spread open. I'd like to be friends. She told me. I smiled kindly. That's all? That's fine, you don't have to get all flustered. I told her and shook her hand. Friends it is. And now then, about what you wanted in return for helping me. That, I said, I've thought about it, and to take a load off your shoulders, I believe I've come up with a substantial way to pay off your debt. I'll be the judge of that, So iPhone said, but go on. All I want are two things. First off, since I helped you, the next time I need help with something, I would appreciate it if you helped me. I said. Done. So iPhone said. What's the second thing? There are a couple of things I'd like to ask you. If you answer honestly, you can consider your debt paid off. I told her, folding my arms, but keeping my right hand balled into a loose fist. I will answer to best of my ability. Understand that as your superior I reserve the right to refuse to answer certain questions. So iPhone told me. I can agree to those terms. I don't think I'll be asking any questions you'd adamantly refuse to answer. I said to her. Then ask away. So iPhone stated. I lifted my right hand to my chin, still letting my right elbow rest in my left hand. I smirked. I've been wondering this for a while now. Just what are your feelings towards Yoriyuki? That's. So iPhone was getting really nervous and flushing. So iPhone turned completely red. I can't say it, but why you can tell how I feel, right? You know just how much I like her, right? And so iPhone paused. I said it. She moaned, gripping at her hair. I had a feeling you liked her. I just wanted to make sure. My next question is, considering how you feel, and how even I could figure it out, any theories as to why Yoriyuki hasn't said anything? I asked. I'm not sure. So iPhone pushed her fingers together. I look younger than you do. Perhaps she feels the same, but perhaps she wants to wait till I look a little more mature before saying anything. Also, it's not right for her to feel that way about me. She started to angst. It's okay for Akari Teiko and Homura Yuna, but Yoriyuki-sama is a noble. The Shihoan Elder Council would be furious, and as a member of the lower noble FON family I'd be ostracized for sure, frowned upon for what I am. She outspread her palm and put her hand on her hip. Her face was still red. You can understand that, right? Forbidden fruit is unbecoming of nobility. Yoriyuki-sama has plenty of candidates suitable for finding a mate. I am okay with admiring her from afar. Yes, that does make sense now that I think about it. The fact that both are nobles, not just Yoriyuki, fills in the missing pieces of the puzzle. Right, thanks for telling me then, and you don't have to worry about Yoriyuki finding out. I winked. This'll be just between us. Thank you, Lelich. Anytime, so iPhone. I said without adding an honorific. I can address you informally now, right? After all, we're friends, aren't we? Just don't do it in a professional setting. If other people heard you addressing me so informally they might get the wrong idea, Yoriyuki-sama especially. I have a reputation to keep up after all. You mean as the ruthless captain of the executive militia? I asked. Yes, hey. She got mad. I laughed. You walked right into that one. So iPhone put on a smirk not that much different from my own and folded her arms. I suppose I did. Anyway, I said, putting a hand on my forehead, brushing up my bangs and looking off away from the den, we should probably get back to work. Yes. We should. Good luck with that teaching assignment. I am sure you'll do fine. So iPhone said to me. Thanks for the vote of confidence. I said to her. You're welcome. She said. I just smiled and walked off. So iPhone was all right. I was kind of surprised she extended a hand of friendship towards me. I didn't think anyone would come to see me as a friend here. The more I thought about it, the more I decided I needed to tell her something important. I went back to my dorm and worked and honed my skills until nightfall. I then went back to So iPhone's quarters to talk to her. I knocked. She answered promptly. Lelich. She was confused. There's something I need to tell you. I told her. I should have said it earlier, but the thought didn't cross my mind until later. Go ahead, I suppose. So iPhone was understandably confused. This was completely uncharacteristic for me, but I had to tell her this. It was important. So iPhone, about us being friends, I began. I never thought anyone would consider declaring themselves my friend while I was here in the Godi, and I just want you to know that, while I may not always be worthy of your friendship, I will always value it. What are you saying? So iPhone was even more confused. In time you'll understand what I mean. Perhaps I'm just being paranoid, but I wanted to tell you this now, before I forgot. I told her. Well, thank you for telling me. This situation was getting awkward fast. Right. I pointed in the direction of my dorm. I'm going to go turn in for the night. Sorry to bother you at this hour. It's fine, I wasn't asleep yet. So iPhone said. Good night then. Yeah, good night. I said and left. I felt a little better with that off my chest. What was that all about? My Zanpakuto wanted to know. I can't afford to be tied down by any individual if I am to default back into old habits. It's a way of clearing my conscience. I responded. But you haven't. My Zanpakuto reminded me. Not yet, but somehow I get the feeling that I eventually may. The climb to the top is never an easy one, nor a clear one. It's not uncommon to expect an avalanche or two and perhaps some inclement weather. How poetic. My Zanpakuto remarked. Like I said to So iPhone, it might be nothing. I might never become like my old self, I might never find an eternal rival or archenemy, but I want to be prepared for the worst. And to do that I must have a clear conscience. I told my Zanpakuto. Out of sight and out of mind. By breaking the emotional bonds that bind me, my spirit can be free. Something like that. I smiled. I returned to my dorm with the moon looming overhead at its fullest. I lay down on my bed and went to sleep. Chapter 13, Lelich the Keto Instructor. Lelich's Dream. Lelich's POV. It was that awful dream again. Again there was a hollow attacking Colin, and again I appeared as a Soul Reaper captain and attacked the hollow, and still I was looking from the hollow's eyes. Before everything went black I felt a numbing sting from my dream body's throat. My eyes opened to my bedroom and the first thing I did was make sure that my throat was unscarred. There are theories that very real dreams can kill you if you don't wake up quick enough. There was no wound on my throat. I then realized how panicked my breathing was. Something the matter, Lelich? My Zanpakuto asked me. I calmed down. It's nothing. I said. I left my office and headed for the academy. Today was my first day with my teaching position. I felt ready. I had spent the past several weeks working up lesson plans and conversing with the senior administrators and the academy headmaster. All of the first-year teachers other than me that had Kukaki Byakuya as a student of theirs were nervous wrecks. Their panic was understandable, but not justified. Byakuya was an okay kid. He reminds me a lot of Suzaku when he was younger, but Byakuya is much less naive. He's a law-abider to the letter, but he's not about to let that stop him from using it to his advantage for the right reasons. As I walked I wondered how Yoriyuki was enjoying So iPhone's gift. So iPhone had gotten her a weekly vacation to the Shiroishi Onsen. Literally means White Rock Onsen. The vacation was for this week. And since So iPhone was always on guard with Yoriyuki, that meant that she was there too. And since Omadafu Kotaiko was away on an important assignment, that meant that Urahara-san was in charge. So iPhone was not too happy when she realized that Omadafu Kotaiko's assignment collided with Yoriyuki's vacation. And since So iPhone put professionalism above petty grudges, she reluctantly had to leave Urahara-san in charge. Yoriyuki told her not to worry and I agreed. Urahara-san may not have been the most active or tidy officer, but he did his job and he did it well. I entered the academy grounds and walked straight to the classroom where I would be taking attendance. I was teaching the advanced track for Keto. My body hadn't aged a day, so I still looked like I could be in the academy myself, then again so did Rox-sensei. A bunch of students, 28 to be precise, entered my classroom, where the targeting range was out back behind the classroom. Byakuya took a seat right in the front and center. A lot of the students knew he was. He had started staying at the academy a few days prior to entering, and word about his arrival spread fast since his dad and a few servants had escorted him. As his teacher I didn't care that he was the son of the most famous noble family in the Soul Society. If he didn't do his job I wouldn't put him through. Of course, I wasn't worried about Byakuya in the least. In the short time I had known him he showed promise of being a good student. Then again, so did I, and I was always completely unmotivated when I was alive. As students walked in, the seats around Byakuya were reluctantly filled up, save for one time. A girl with short black hair, frayed like she had just rolled out of bed, and dark violet eyes entered the room and sat down promptly next to Byakuya's right, the only open seat at the front of the classroom. I wasn't always watching the door. I spent some time writing my name on the board and setting up lesson plans on everyone's desk. We wouldn't actually be practicing Keto for a couple of lessons, just as was recommended to me by the other instructors. When the class was filled of students, I started my opening speech. Good morning, students. I am your Keto instructor, Lampuj Lelich. You will refer to me as Lampuj or Lelich Sensei at all times unless given permission to refer to me otherwise. I was going to command respect so long as I was in charge. I had every right to. Of course, I wasn't above forming closer, supportive relationships with the students if they were having trouble. There was nothing in the handbook that said you couldn't be on friendly terms with your instructor. As members of the advanced track, I expect great things from you all. You each have the potential to become valuable members of the GODI 13. You have entered into my class as mere souls, but when you leave my classroom this year you will be prepared for what's to come in future years. There was silence and I looked at the rather blank expressions on my students' faces. I think you overdid the speech there, Mizan Pakuto said. I didn't ask for your opinion, I told her. Right then, I said, grabbing hold of the clipboard. Let me take the roll call. I had gotten all the way to the eyes without running into anything rather interesting. I swallowed when I saw the next name on the list. I thought it was possibly a mistake since I hadn't seen him walk in the door and he never showed interest in being a Soul Reaper. I spoke articulately as I called his name. Is there an Ichimaru Jin here? I asked. At the back of the classroom, Jin stood up next to his desk. Right here, Lelich Sensei. His usual smile was plastered upon his face. I continued to the next student on the list. Kukaki Byakuya. Present, Sensei. He responded promptly. The students nearby him were now even more nervous of his presence, save the one girl who had promptly sat down next to him. Either she didn't know how important the Kuchikis were to the Soul Society or, like me, she simply didn't care and viewed Byakuya as just another student. I finally got her name when I called out, Sayuri, Hisuna. She jumped to her feet and saluted. Ready, Sensei? Very good, have a seat. I told her and checked her name off the list. There was only one other name that stuck with me, and only because of the face that matched the name. Shapani, Susanna. Here. The response was so quiet I barely heard it. I looked over to my right, which would be the far left side of the room for the students. At the left end of the third row was a girl with silver hair and red eyes. She looked very introverted and timid. It reminded me of Yuna when we first met. Besides Hisuna, Susanna, Jin, and Byakuya, the remaining 24 students in my class were rather plain. None of them really stuck out as anything peculiar or special. I had meant to talk to Jin after class, but he was out the door before I could get a hold of him. I did manage to get a chance to speak with him after the 7th day when he was sitting on the sidelines waiting for a chance to practice Hado 31. I handed him a slip of paper indicating that I wanted him to meet me in my office after hours. I did it discreetly so that none of the other students would see it. Jin was a good student, so good Lord knows what kind of rumors would have spread if I gave a hard-working student a notification to see me in my office. To cover up that there was anything going on, I shouted at one of the students who hit one of the targets, "No Sakamai, good aim." When Jin reached my office, about 5 minutes later than I had asked him to be, he walked in, without knocking, and sat down in the chair in front of my desk. Hey dear Sensei. Am I in trouble? Jin, why are you here? I asked him. When we met all those years ago you never showed any interest in wanting to become a Soul Reaper. What brought you here? More importantly, where's Rangiku? Not sure I should be telling ya dat. Why else do ya think I've been avoiding ya? I only came here cause you got the better of me this time. If I refused your invite you woulda written me up and I woulda been in quite a mess. That woulda caused a load of problems for my objectives. Jin stated. What objectives would those be? I put my elbows on my desk, interlocked my fingers and rested my face against them. Like I said, not sure I should be telling ya dat. Jin responded. Fine, then at least answer me this, where's Rangiku? I asked. She's here. She's in the beginner's track. Jin told me. She followed me here. So you were planning on leaving without her? I asked. I've said too much. Jin replied. Look, Jin. Whatever reasoning you have for coming here, is it really so bad that you can't trust an old friend? Friend? Jin asked. We knew each other for 2 days. I could always ask Rangiku to visit my office. I suggested. Jin opened his eyes. You wouldn't dare. Try me. I said. Rangiku is his Achilles heel. I grinned. I've got the advantage in that I'm a staff member, so any funny stuff and I can have Jin roped in for interrogation. Jin closed his eyes. Alright, I suppose I could tell ya just the basics. I sat silently and listened. I brought my chair a bit closer to the desk and leaned forward slightly. Ya remember that guy Eisen, right? I haven't seen him since I got here, but yes, I remember him. I replied. Remember when Eisen asked ya for help with a little experiment? Jin asked. I scowled. Did he get to you? I asked. Not me, Rangiku. Jin responded. What exactly did he do to her? I asked. And what do ya think you could do with that kinda knowledge? If you went and tried to expose Eisen right now, he'd turn the situation around to make you look bad. Even if ya went to your captain, who do you think the Central 46 is gonna believe? The testimony from a captain delivered to them by their supporting officer or a vice captain? Jin asked. I have my methods of taking down monsters of his potential caliber. What did he do? I asked. Eisen's working on some kinda experiment to make some kinda device. I didn't get a good look at it, but he used it to take fragments of Rangiku's soul, or rather his men did, who I followed. Jin stated. Of all the possibilities, this had to be the one that's the truth. Great. I commented. I was unsurprised by what Jin had to tell me. I had come up with 1,481 possible reasons for why he was here. What he had told me was low on probability, but it was still a possibility. The fact that it was true was rather unnerving. The incident with Hashima was bad enough, but the fact that Eisen could be just like him was problematic. No, it was worse. Hashima was cocky, overconfident, and smug. Eisen was clever. He would have to beat the head captain at chess. I wondered if I should potentially ask Hirako Teiko to keep an eye on Eisen's behavior. The man didn't like Eisen already, but I don't know if opening my mouth would be the best idea. If Eisen indeed was plotting something sinister, it would be best if I kept all information to myself and didn't give the man reason to think anyone was suspicious of him. If I went to Hirako Teiko unwittingly, just to tell him about Eisen, the chances of Eisen being aware of my visit were scarily close to 100%. If Hirako started keeping a watchful eye on him right after our visit, Eisen would surely know I was suspicious of him. He wouldn't have forgotten me. He certainly didn't forget Rangiku. This is going to remain between you and me. I told Jin. Just do me a favor and stay out of trouble. Yeah, no, I can't completely do that. Just stay away from Eisen until you graduate from the academy. If you do something and it comes out that I knew about your grudge towards him, especially considering my roots, I'd be axed for sure. I can't have that. If you're here for revenge, do it discreetly and don't drag me into it. I told Jin. I thought you'd be willing to join forces. How disappointing. Jin answered. You said it yourself. You and I are similar, but not the same. I plan to get back at Eisen for this, but doing so right now would prove fruitless. Because of his position, he'd win out in a case of just testimony, and even if I did win my case, he'd just get a slap on the wrist for abuse of Rukanga civilians, if anything at all. Whatever Eisen's up to, it's a lot bigger than just taking fragments from Rukanga citizens, and I'll be sure to dig up what and expose it. I stated. Jin opened his mouth so that his teeth showed as he smiled. You're a very interesting guy, Lelich, just like I thought. I didn't say anything in response. We done? Can I go now? Yes. You're dismissed. If anyone asks what you were here for, you can tell them the truth. I said. Jin was confused. That I was chatting with an old friend I grew up with. Jin smiled again. Telling the truth, but not the whole truth, one of my most favorite word games of all time. A game, yeah, I grinned like Jin was It is sort of like a game, isn't it? See ya tomorrow for class 10. Jin said and left. After he was gone for a couple of hours, I had finished my evaluations of my students. Jin, Byakuya, Hisuna, and Susanna were at the top of the class in that order. Once I finished with my work, I sat down on my bed with my Zanpakuto across my lap. My urgency didn't get me into my inner world, but it got my sword to speak to me. Yes, Lelich? I finally figured out what I potentially want to do with your power. I said. Oh? She asked. Isenfuku Taiko. Depending on how things develop with him, I want to be able to use your power to take him down. I said. Words mean nothing unless you put them into action. She said. Show me you mean what you say, and then we shall revisit this point again. Very well. I said. The months seemed to fly by as I worked as an instructor. I did a really good job at it too. I didn't have many complaints from students. I was tough on them, but I didn't expect what they couldn't produce, save for my star pupils. The fact that I revered Hisuna, Byakuya, Jin, and Susanna's abilities turned out to be a double-edged sword for each of them. They were often called upon to be examples, and I often would pair them up with someone who needed to be tutored. Out of the four of them, only Hisuna seemed to be unbothered by it all. During one August afternoon, Susanna came by my office. She shut the door and shouted, "I can't take it anymore, sensei." Susanna, lower your voice and sit down. She did so grudgingly. Take a deep breath and start again. She did so and then said, Why do you always have to pick on me to help other students? Why do you have to keep calling attention to me? You're my fourth best student. You, Kukaki Byakuya, Sayuri Hisuna, and Ichimaru Jin, all are on a different level of ability from the other students. I don't have teaching assistants, so I make do with what I have, and I have the four of you. I told her. But Susanna's distress showed we were getting closer to the heart of the problem. It's not like I don't think you can handle the extra work. I talk with your other teachers beforehand before assigning you to tutor someone. I told her. And that's just the problem. That and always making me an example to the other students. She complained. Why is it a problem? I asked. She started to get depressed. Surely you know that I don't exactly look normal. It's true that silver hair and red eyes are hard to come by for someone your physical age. Does that have something to do with it? I asked. It has everything to do with it. Susanna was distraught, and it puzzled me as to why. I had the feeling I was about to learn a little more about her. And it's for things like this that I have an open door policy. Go ahead, Susanna. I told her. During my time in Rukonga, people always avoided me. They thought my red eyes and silver hair made me creepy. Some people would throw things at me and call me a freak. I'd still be out there, in the woods, fending for my life, avoiding people. But someone changed your mind. She nodded. A woman soul reaper. She had long green hair and her eyes were like mine. She saw me all crumpled up in a pile of hay, trying to fend off the cold. She appeared to be traveling alone, but I could sense so many other presences around her. Did you catch her name? I asked. The person she was describing sounded a lot like Homura Yuna. Susanna responded. I smiled slightly. Even on the hunt for revenge, you still can afford to be a civil human being, eh, Yuna? Sensei, you're smiling. Do you know that woman? Susanna asked. Depends, what did she do? I asked her. She saw me there lying in a heap. The darkened aura of my spiritual pressure had her nearly mistake me for a hollow. She said she was busy with a mission, but she said that my spiritual pressure was too high for me to stay out there like I was. She commented how it was too dangerous for me to travel with her, so she had some of her companions escort me to the Siratai and join the academy. Susanna answered. I do know her. The woman you met used to be my vice captain. I told Susanna with pride in my voice. I then went back to being serious and professional. I take it that your hair and eyes are still getting you picked on by the other students. There are always arguments during the tutor sessions. Some have tried to take advantage of me. I've been trying to keep everything together, but I can't take it anymore. Susanna complained. I know you probably don't see it, but every time you put me up on a pedestal the other students look at me like, yes of course Susanna's doing it right, she's a freak. Why did you wait until now to tell me? I asked. I wasn't sure what to say or what you would do if I told you. Susanna said. I'm assuming what she doesn't want is me calling attention to this in the middle of class. I also can't play favorites just because she's a good student. I think I know something I can do though. Susanna, I want you to trust me to handle this properly. Go about your day and I'll see you tomorrow, okay? Okay sensei. She left. The next day class assembled and according to my lesson plans I would be running drills for casting Bakudo 21, Sekienten without an incantation. Before I did though, I called Susanna, Byakuya, Hisuna, and Jin to stand next to me while the other students were sitting on the deck. Students, I said. Standing before you are the star students. I don't make a habit of pointing out proper procedure, but these four have delivered properly each time. From now on I will not be calling upon them to demonstrate how to do things properly if I see any of you failing to do things properly. If you need help or need to see an example, wave me over and ask me for one of them, or if you would prefer I myself will demonstrate just like I do at the start of the lesson. Is that clear to all of you? Hi, sensei. They said in unison. Good, now get ready for today's lesson. I replied. After class I asked Byakuya, Hisuna, Jin, and Susanna to stay behind so I could talk to them. Since they would now be my unofficial teaching assistants, they needed to be prepared for the lessons in advance. I told them that after class each day that they were to stay behind and I would give them the next day lesson. I wouldn't say how to do it or give recommendations. I trusted them each enough to do things properly. Ah, wonderful, as if I didn't have enough work already. Jin complained. I won't let you down, sensei. Byakuya saluted. I am honored for this task. Thank you, sensei. Hisuna bowed low. Thank you, sensei. I could see it in Susanna's eyes that she was very happy with the way I handled things. I dismissed the four of them and went to the teacher's lounge. A couple of my colleagues pulled me aside to discuss a particular student, one Jin Ichimaru. What about him? I asked. As far as anyone except I knew, Jin was a very good student, if but a little smart-mouthed. We've been discussing his ability. He's very gifted, he knows more than some of the 6th-year students. His academic professor, Yuriska-sensei, stated. Both Tsubasa-sensei and I have seen Jin take down students twice his size. Inagata-sensei, Jin's kendo instructor, stated. Tsubasa-sensei was his Hakuda instructor. And, what's the big fuss all about? I asked. Lamperouge-sensei, now that you're here we want to know how are Jin's Kido skills. He's my top student. Why? His ability has caught the eye of the Central 46. They've declared him this generation's child prodigy. They want us to test him to see if he can graduate at the end of the year. Tsubasa-sensei stated. That's a hefty title to put on someone, what if he doesn't want to? I asked, thinking of Rainjiku. He'd be wasting his time here in the academy if he is indeed ready. It's a chance for him to prosper sooner and be of use to the Gotei. Yuriska-sensei responded. What's my role in this then? I wanted to know. Inagata-sensei handed me a folder. And here is a list of Kido he needs to know. Give this to him and tell him he needs to know it by the end of the semester and he can graduate with the 6th years. I looked at the list and recognized it. It was nothing new from what I had learned myself, but for Jin to learn it all in the span of a few months I didn't think could be done. If he really was a prodigy though, and if he did graduate in 1 year, he'd beat Akari Teiko's old record. I can't believe what I'm thinking. I chuckled to myself. You mean not handing Jin the list so that your former captain can keep her old record? My Zanpakuto asked. I hate it when you do that. I groaned. She laughed. I wasn't that petty to do that, not to Jin anyway. In fact I figured the sooner this flawed revenge scheme of his was over and done with the better. I gave him the packet after Byakuya, Susanna, and Hisuna had left, so as not to crush their own morale, Byakuya's especially, and then sent Jin on his way. I returned to my office to sit down and think. As I sat at my desk there was a knock at the door followed by a joyous, Knock, knock. It was Urahara-san. What are you doing all the way out here? I asked. I want to talk with you, you got a minute? He asked. I've got a bit of evaluation reports to finish. I said. If you get in trouble you can blame everything on me. I'll take the rap. I didn't know if Urahara-san was being serious or if this was his usual lackadaisical attitude towards everything he did, but I also knew that it would be faster to go with him and see what he wanted, than to continue to argue the point. I put my pen down, got up and went with him. After a few minutes of walking Urahara-san started the conversation. Lelich, you know how things work around here, right? The chain of command and all that. I nodded. Well, here's the thing. You know Hakai Funteiko, right? Or at least know who she is? Urahara-san asked. I nodded again. Well, here's the thing, according to Yuaki she just got a request to join the Zero Division. Is she going to accept? I asked. Well, she just got the request today, but she probably will. If she does, I have the feeling Yuaki is going to ask me to take her place. Urahara-san said. Don't you need Bankai for that? I asked. Now where in that little head of yours do you have the idea that I don't have Bankai? Urahara-san asked me. If you did, wouldn't Yuaki have you as vice captain? I asked. Urahara-san smiled. It makes sense that you would think that, but the reasoning behind that is simple. I didn't obtain Bankai through normal methods. I frowned, but Urahara-san spoke before I could open my mouth. Relax, I didn't do anything illegal. I created a device that allows one to forcibly manifest their Zanpakuto. Using this device one can master Bankai in the span of 3 days. And that's exactly what I did. I wouldn't exactly put it past you. I said that like I was joking, but I really meant it. So here's the deal, if I'm the one that becomes captain, we don't exactly know if there are going to be any other candidates put forward, because if I don't then this whole deal out the window. If I'm the one who takes over Hakai Funteiko's position Yuaki wants you to go with me. Your teaching job was more than just an assignment, Lelich. A lot of the intelligent Soul Reapers wind up in the 12th Division at some point, myself and Aizen included. Yuaki's been pushing for Hakai Funteiko to take you under her wing, but she wanted you to have some teaching experience first if she was going to take you at a higher rank than you are now. Urahara-san stated. Sounds like a fair deal. I was pleased about this. I was moving up and I'd have a captain I already knew. What position would I have? I asked. Assuming everything goes well, 15th seat, the same any novice academy instructor would have. Urahara-san answered. Yuaki also thought that if you liked the students you were working with that she'd pull a few strings, maybe talk to the Kuchikis, and see what she can do about having you staying as Byakuya's instructor till he graduates. Of course, that depends on you and him. Well, I'd certainly like to have some more teaching experience under my belt. I said. Even if Jin is going to graduate this year, facilitating the instruction of Kido can give me access to other future members of the Godi. If I'm going to take down Aizen I'm going to need to be at his level. I have to get to Yuna's rank, maybe above. What happened with Hashima won't happen a second time. When I bring down Aizen and expose him, he will be incarcerated on sight. Whatever he's plotting I'll make sure I get to him before he finishes his plan. Still, if Jin graduates, I need to set up an extra failsafe in the event of a worst-case scenario. How strong is Yuaki's pull? Do I detect a deal in the process of being made? Urahara-san asked me. I nodded. I'll continue to teach, but there are terms I want agreed upon. Any chance I could sit in on that meeting when Yuaki pulls her strings? I don't think she'd be against that. You've got a friend in our Captain Lelich, and in me. Urahara-san patted me on the shoulder a few times before shaking it. Never hesitate to come to us if you ever need help. I looked away, trying to hide my discomfort. Thank you. So, how about we go on back to your office so you can get those evaluation reports done? Urahara-san asked me. Sounds good. I answered. Kukaki Family Grounds. The school year was over. Much to my surprise, not that I didn't think it could happen, Jin passed all qualifications. He also got a dangerous location, a seeded ranking in the 5th division. Yuriuki said that Hirako Teiko deserved bragging rights for reeling the guy in. I knew why he got Jin, but I kept my mouth shut. However, right now I had more pressing matters to be concerned about than Jin's desires for revenge. Kukaki Teiko, Yuriuki, Soifone, Byakuya, and I were all sitting in the same meeting room. We were discussing a way what to do with me before Urahara-san's captain's exam. No other candidate had been put forth, so if he succeeded in completing the exam, something of which even I thought would be a walk in the park for him, I'd be moving to 12th division. Soifone nagged me for following him there, wondering how I could follow a captain whose dorm smelled like mayonnaise left out in the sun. I just told her I was interested in climbing higher. If that meant I had to have Urahara-san for a captain, then so be it. My words didn't deter our friendship in the slightest, and it was the truth. Yuriuki said she wondered what she might do now that she had a third seat's position open. I asked her on the way to the Kukaki grounds if she considered promoting both Lusuka-senpai and giving his position to Otomaka-senpai. When she asked where this was coming from, I just said 2 words, Otomaka Takako. Ah, you heard about that, did you? Yuriuki had scratched her head in response to my statement on the walk here. I make it a habit of knowing information about key personnel wherever I go, like knowing that both you and Soifone are from noble families and that she follows her duty with the utmost professionalism, while you make a habit of following the words, if nothing interesting is happening, I'll make it so, ... I had responded. Lelich. Show some respect. Soifone, who was with us, had said. Calm down, Soifone. No reason to jump down the kid's throat when he's spot on mark. Yuriuki had told her. Soifone had blushed. Hi, Yuriuki-sama. Gomen. It had been about 20 minutes since that conversation. We were now sitting in a meeting room discussing my future given the circumstances. Byakuya had entered the room rather eagerly when he heard I was here, but his enthusiasm dropped considerably when he saw Yuriuki. What is she doing here? Byakuya glared. Now Byakuya, his grandfather said to him. Shihoin-san is Lelich's captain. As such, it is against Godei policy for me to make a deal with Lelich without discussing it with her first. Byakuya grunted and sat in a chair next to his grandfather. So, Byakuya-bo, do I pick bad teachers? Yuriuki asked. He ignored Yuriuki's comment and looked at Kukaki Teiko. Gi-san, if possible I'd like to continue to work under Lamperouge-sensei, so long as he's moving on up to a 15th seat position as he announced to the class he might be. I had mentioned to my class what Urahara-san said to me that day when one of the students noted that I was unusually cheerful. I don't think that's outside the realm of both the Kuchikis to get Central 46 to comply to. Kukaki Teiko replied. Of course the young sensei and Shihoin-san must agree to this first. It struck me as interesting that Yuriuki condoned such formal addressing of her, but I speculated that Kukaki Teiko was an exception, much like Soifone. I've got no problem with it if Lelich doesn't have a problem with it. Yuriuki stated. I don't either. I'd be more than happy to keep teaching your grandson, Kukaki Teiko. I told the head of the household. Well then, if the agreement was this easy, why are we having this meeting? Kukaki Teiko almost laughed. Lelich said he has some special arrangements he wants us to consider. Go ahead, Lelich. Yuriuki told me, leaning back in her chair. Hi, I answered and then sat up straight. If the pull of the Shihoin and Kukaki clans combined is as strong as I believe, I'd like to have 2 other students looped with Byakuya into my classes. They were my other top students in a league of their own. I'd be reluctant to have their talent squandered by another teacher who doesn't know them as well as I do, so long as I can avoid such things. I said, making sure the Kido emblem on my vest was reflected off the chandelier light. I don't think that's unreasonable. A 15th seed constantly looping with 3 students that is also an academic and Kido valedictorian, who is also the man who taught this generation's child prodigy, wouldn't be turned down by the Central 46 if we both made the request. What do you think, Shihoin-san? Kukaki Teiko asked her. I say if Lelich recognizes talent, we should let these 2 lucky students be taught by the best the Seoul Society has to offer at the moment. Yuriuki stated. Very well then. Kukaki Teiko was in agreement. I, however, wasn't finished. Hold on a moment, there's one more thing I want to add. Very well, speak up. Kukaki Teiko stated. I'd like to oversee a class in the beginning level, second year. There's a student, a Matsumoto Rangiku, whom I'd like to oversee her studies. I requested. That's unusual. Kukaki Teiko stated. Old friend of yours? Yuriuki asked. I nodded. I only knew her for 2 days, but, look, I know it's a lot to ask, but it would mean a lot to me if I could teach her. I had other reasons for wanting to be Rangiku's teacher, but both Kukaki Teiko and Yuriuki didn't need to know them. With Jin now as close to Aizen as he could possibly get, if Aizen got wind of it or if Jin acted while Rangiku was still at the academy, I knew Rangiku would need someone she could use as support. The chances of either of those things were low, but I wanted to have things put in place just in case. Jin wasn't a fool by any margin, but then again neither was Aizen. You don't beat the head captain in chess and not have street smarts. If Jin was found out and an investigation was sent underway, there would be no way of proving that I had preemptive knowledge of the attack, even with this action put into place. To the average mind, I was simply attempting to be a pillar of support for a girl who lost a friend. No one knew the real me. Not Yuna, not Akari Teiko, not Yuriuki, not So iPhone, not Naomi. No one. I wasn't as nice a person in the dark as I made myself out to be. I could be a very cruel person if need be. The potential for that still terrified me, but I would do what was necessary if it turned out that Aizen was truly a monster. For now I'd have to keep my head low and wait for development. Well, I don't think that's unreasonable. It's not like Lelich wouldn't be able to handle teaching classes of 2 different levels. Not with his brain. Yuriuki commented. Still, the Central 46 might not see it that way. Lelich knows this Matsumoto Rangiku and 2 days Teiko. I interrupted. I was only in Rokanga for 2 days. Don't believe me, check the records. Still, I owe her for food and lodging. This would be my way of paying her back. Gisan, let Lamperouge-sensei teach his friend. With Ichimaru graduating, that makes me his top student. If he needs help, I can always throw in some extra hours off of my free time. Byakuya stated. Someone's quite attached to their sensei. Yuriuki chuckled. Quiet. My assistance would benefit the Kukaki family. It would show that we believe in the people coming first. This has nothing to do with the interaction between myself and Lamperouge-sensei. Byakuya shouted. Thanks for the offer, Byakuya-kun. If I run into trouble, I'll be sure to notify you. What I said seemed to keep him in good spirits. I refer to Byakuya with the kun honorific only when speaking with him. He might be a noble, but I find referring to him as Byakuya-sama or Byakuya-dono to be a bit too formal. Also, in the Gotei, it's skill before birth, so to denote my respect for him, but show that I'm still the one in charge, Byakuya-kun. Of course, I only do so to avoid a confrontation with the idea that I don't respect nobility. In my head, I don't add an honorific for that reason. I consider us close enough for that. I've been his teacher for a year and I was his tutor beforehand. Plus the kid respects me. Well, we'll see what the Central 46 has to say about this. Is there anything else you want to add, Lamperouge-sensei? Kukaki Teiko asked. I'm good, and you can call me by given name if you'd like. You don't have to be so formal towards your grandson's teacher. I already have the next head of the Shihoin clan on my side. If I could get the Kukakis in my pocket, I'd be golden. It would be unbecoming of a Kukaki not to refer to a professional by his respectful status. So as long as you keep this teaching position, I shall call you Lelich-sensei. Kukaki Teiko responded. Fine by me. I responded. I kind of figured that would be his response. Well, Yuriuki got up and stretched. You and I should probably get some rest, Ejinrei. She asked him. Urahara-san's exam is tomorrow. By the time we get to our divisions, it'll probably be late evening. Have a pleasant evening, Lelich-sensei. Byakuya's bow was shallow, but it was rather low for someone of his level. You sure you should be bowing that low to me? I asked. You are the grandson of the most famous noble family in all of Seoul society. Kuka Kiteiko was the one to speak. The boy respects your authority with the utmost devotion. He doesn't show his teachers even half the respect he does you when he talks about his studies. Byakuya stood back up. Lamperouge-sensei knows what he's doing as an instructor. Gi-san, when he gets better you should put him in your squad. Well, he'd have to improve his shunpo ability a great deal to get at least a 14th seats position in my squad. I hear your stamina is still giving you trouble. Not as much as it used to. I scratched my head. When I first entered the academy I was on the ground at the end of the physical. Now I could probably do that in my sleep. Still, you're right, a couple dozen flash steps and I'm like a person with asthma in need of an inhaler. Kuka Kiteiko smirked. Well, if you make progress with your Zanpakuto, foremost, that generally increases spiritual ability. As you gain Ryu-ryoku it begins to substitute itself for natural energy. And since mastery of the Zanpakuto is the best way to control one's Ryu-ryoku, progression with it is absolutely vital for those with low physical abilities to some extent. Thanks for the tip, I said. Please, you're my grandson's favorite instructor. I'm only repaying the kindness you've shown him. Kuka Kiteiko responded. Well, thank you, I said. I gave a low bow to Kuka Kiteiko. I appreciate you putting forth my request. This means a lot to me. As I said before, it's really no trouble, he replied. I stood up and pointed my thumb over my shoulder. Anyway, I should probably get back to my division. With school on break, I have regular academic duties, plus if Urahara-san passes his exam I need to be prepared to support him when he addresses the squad. See you in a month, sensei, Byakuya said to me. Yeah, see you, I said and left. As I walked back to my division, my Zanpakuto spoke to me. You really are hell-bent on getting them to like you. Why not? The Kukaki family is the most famous noble family. If I become more than just a familiar face to them, like say for instance a mentor to Byakuya, I could easily get a lot of pull. Captain Kukaki Jinrei isn't going to be the head of the division forever and neither will his son Captain Kukaki Sojun. If I stay in as saintly in Byakuya's eyes as I am now, then by the time he becomes head of the house he may start looking at me as an unofficial advisor. I replied. You've really thought this through. Did you expect anything less? I asked. My objective hasn't changed, and now with Aizen becoming a potential threat I need to be ready in the event of a worst-case scenario. Perhaps you are indeed deserving of my power. Mind telling me your name then? I asked. I cannot. You probably still wouldn't be able to hear it. Face it, Lelich, you don't have the true motivation. Right now Aizen is just a phantom enemy. If he turns out to be the real deal then we'll talk. Did I ever mention how much you remind me of a certain green-haired witch? I asked my Zanpakuto. More than once, she responded. I growled. You've got company. She terminated our connection. One thing I disliked is that communicating with my Zanpakuto like that weakened my sixth sense, so it made it harder for me to sense approaching individuals. Judging by the position of the moon and the location of the Senteikyu, I figured I had to be smack dab in the middle of Division 4's territory. The person I sensed I could not see. It seemed as if they were trying to hide. Who goes there? I asked. From around the corner stepped a woman. She had a scruffy shiakusho, a vice-captain's armband, and long green hair. Good evening, Lelich, she said. Her expression wasn't all that cheerful. Why Yuna? I couldn't be sure, but it looked exactly like her. It had to be her. What are you doing here? I thought you were chasing down Hashima, I said, surprised to see her. The trail has me at North Rukonga 1, so I stopped by to pay a visit. No one knows I'm here. I entered from the northeast side so none of the gate guards saw me. Yuna responded. If I'm found I'll be put back in the division on sight. I can't do that, not yet. Then why sneak in? I asked. I snuck in because of you, Yuna said and walked closer to me. I wanted to see you again. Why me? I asked. Just so I don't forget your face, and to personally thank you for giving me this chance. Hashima won't get away with what he did, Yuna responded. And also, I wanted to apologize. For what? I asked. I was selfish. I took that kiss and I didn't think about your feelings at all. I don't know how long I'll be gone. I probably made you harp on me and I don't want that, not if you find someone else first. Yuna said. I don't expect you to start liking me. I am infatuated by you. I didn't know how else to express my gratitude, but in retrospect I think my actions were a bit over the top. There's no reason to apologize. I haven't found anyone worthy to start falling apart over. I don't think I will really. I told Yuna. Good. But if you do, don't think about my feelings. They're unimportant. Yuna stated. I changed the subject. As long as you're here I want to thank you for something. Thank me? For what? She asked. Do you remember a girl you sent to the Siratai? She had silver hair, same color eyes as yours. I do. Why? Yuna asked. I'm now the Kido instructor of that girl. I told Yuna. Good. You'll be good for her I'm sure. Yuna responded. I'm also the Kido instructor for the Kukaki family head's grandson. I told her. That's impressive. Yuna responded. Do you think you'll ever come back? I asked her. She shook her head. I don't really know. I want to, but Hashima must pay for what he did to Mari-sama. I see. I responded. It was a pleasure having the chance to chat with you this evening. Yuna told me. At any rate I should get going. Then I guess this is goodbye for now. I told her. Yes, but before I leave, she said. Yes. I asked. When I first appeared you called me by my given name. When did you start doing that? She asked. When you left that day is when I started. Since you're following your desires instead of staying with the squad, which I find quite admirable, it breaks the professional bond it set between us and I thought that, if you did have feelings for me that you wouldn't mind such informality. Or am I wrong? I asked. No. Yuna answered. I have to go. She disappeared with Shunpo. I simply closed my eyes, took a deep breath and started off again for the second division. Yuna, don't let your wish for revenge consume you. I thought to myself. Don't become like me. End of Chapter 13. Chapter 14, Lelouch fully awakens. Lelouch's POV. Good morning students. I told my morning Kido class. Good morning Lamperouge-sensei. They chimed in unison. It had been 4 months since I had that chat with Kukaki Teiko and Yuriyuki. The day after it Urahara-san had his captain's exam and passed and the day after that I moved into the 12th division and stood by Urahara-san when he addressed the rest of the squad. Many of the lower-ranked officers, over the first couple days, would ask me what I thought of Urahara-san since I had been with him before we both transferred here. There was one person though who I could not stand and that was the vice-captain, Saraga Kihiri. I have to give it to Hirako Teiko. He really knows how to classify people. Brat is the perfect word to describe Saragaki Fukuteiko. She attacks Urahara-san on a regular basis. I don't know why he puts up with it. I've asked him why, stating that someone like Saragaki Fukuteiko left unchecked only shows that he can't handle being a captain. His answer was that he was sure that Saragaki Fukuteiko would adjust to his captaincy eventually. Both Hirako Teiko and I begged to differ. 2 weeks after the start of his captaincy Urahara-san revolutionized the 12th Division. He began what was now known as the Department of Research and Development. I became an active participant in the department. In 1 month I managed to get the Seoul Society to develop technologies that I was already used to, like high-profile networking databases and automatic coffee makers, not that I needed the latter. Urahara-san dubbed me a genius. Over the next 2 months I sent blueprints in my spare time to the department since my work as a teacher took up more time than my squad work. One thing I'm still concerned about is the man Urahara-san got to be our third seat. Kuratsukima Yuri was in the maggot's nest after being deemed by Central 46 to be a threat to himself and others. I know solitary confinement is supposed to change the criminal mind because the isolation gives them time to think, but I was more uneasy around Kurotsuka than I was about Aizen. The first day as a second-year teacher was invigorating. Students weren't told who their teachers were, just where to show up and when. I think I made Hisuna and Susanna's day when they knew I was their teacher. Susanna, Hisuna, and Byakuya were once again my top students in the advanced track on a league of their own from the others, and after the first week I made a note of this to the rest of the class, putting the same procedure I had worked out last year. A couple of the students thought I had observer bias, so I got everyone up in a line that was complaining alongside Byakuya, Hisuna, and Susanna and had a little sport going. I put all the complaining students on one team and put Byakuya, Hisuna, and Susanna on another. The game was similar to the rules of dodgeball. The players on each team were allowed to use Heido 4, 8, 29, 31, 32, and 33 to hit their opponents. Dodging using Shunpo was grounds for disqualification. Blocking was allowed via Bakudo 39, in Kosen. If you were hit by your opponent's attack, you were considered out. If you blocked within Kosen and it shattered, you were out. If you blocked within Kosen and it remained stabilized, your attacker was out. Byakuya, Hisuna, and Susanna wound up with a flawless victory. That was the last there ever was of students complaining about my teaching methods. A couple of the administrators demanded to talk to me after that day in class. I thought I was in trouble for creating a situation that encouraged the endangerment of students, but in reality I was actually congratulated for my method of keeping control of the class. I wound up inventing a new trend, Kido Tag. Other teachers, including myself, now use it to test student abilities in certain blocking and attacking Kido. When Urahara-san heard word, he sent me a letter to tell me that I was a natural-born inventor. Of course, not everything these past 4 months has been good news. On my first day teaching the afternoon Kido class for beginners, Ranjika was happy to see me. My beginner class has the skill you would expect from the beginner class, but the problem was Ranjika not only unmotivated more times often than not, she was also turning into a miniature Millie with all the socializing she would do. I know it was only my job to teach and not to parent, but it was difficult to watch and hear about. Ranjika did her work and she did it well, but I would have appreciated it she would at least, for my sake, make the effort to at least be a little more active in her studies and during class as opposed to sitting and talking with a classmate of hers Ise Nanao. After I addressed my students this morning, I began handing back evaluation exams. As always, Byakuya, Hisuna and Susanna had the highest marks in the class, and the rest of the students had varying degrees between slightly above average and as close to below average without failing. After passing back the forms, I called for everyone to follow me out back where we would be learning a high-level Bakudo, one of my personal favorites, Bakudo 61 Rakyukoro. Today's objective was to cast the Bakudo and then follow up with a discarded chant level 20 to 30 Heido if possible. Out of my 28 students, excluding Byakuya, Hisuna, and Susanna, only 5 of my students managed to get to the second part of the assignment and only 13 were actually able to cast the Bakudo by the end of the day. I told those that didn't complete the class work to complete it as homework and also assigned a homework sheet of a list of 2 Kido combination strikes like my Bakudo 63 and Heido 11 combo attack. After my afternoon beginners class, I sat in my office, working out the blueprints for creating high-tech lab equipment like automated robotic arm welders, drills and lasers, when there was a knock on the door. "Come in," I said. I was surprised when Hisuna walked in. More surprised than if Byakuya were to walk into the door. Hisuna never complained about anything, ever. Susanna, I wasn't surprised when she came bursting my office last year, having cracked. The first day I met her, I thought there might have been something wrong with her. Hisuna was a different story. She was perpetually cheerful and never complained about anything. Byakuya had a couple of moments when some extra work I gave him, since he was my top student and I wanted to challenge him and the others, but Hisuna always took what I gave her with a sense of honor and gratitude that even Byakuya, a noble, could learn from. I didn't know what to expect from Hisuna. I could think of only about 131 reasons why she would need to see me. I rolled up my blueprint, put a rubber band around it and stored it in a bucket with the rest of my blank scrolls. "What can I do for you, Hisuna?" I asked her. "Sensei, this is going to sound kind of awkward, but I don't have anyone else to turn to," and Hisuna's discomfort and words eliminated 57 possibilities. "Whatever's on you mind, ask away," I told her. Sensei, have you ever had a girl like you before? Hisuna asked me. And we're back up to 58 possibilities. I thought to myself. I've had my fair share of women express their intimate interest in me. Fair share meaning the entire female student body at Ashford Academy as well as plus the numerous women that like you here in the Soul Society. My Zanpakuto chimed. I ignored her and just listened to Hisuna. Well, are there any you, reciprocated the feelings of. Hisuna, do you have a crush on someone? I asked her. She nodded. Do you want to tell me? I'm not sure. I mean, I've heard rumors you're really close to the person and, well, I never trust rumors, but I laughed slightly. It's okay Hisuna, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but if I know this person it'll make things easier. Who do you like? Bleh. Hisuna was having trouble saying who she liked, but only one person I knew had a surname or given name that started with Ku. Kukaki Byakuya. I asked. Hisuna blushed and nodded. I leaned back in my chair and relaxed. Least it's not me. Thank Britannia it's not me. What's the matter Lelich? You're not into young girls. Zip it. I told my Zanpakuto. So what do you want to know, how to get him to like you? Afraid I can't help you there. I'm not Cupid. I told Hisuna. I know that. She got snappy. Sorry that was rude of me. She apologized. It's fine, I told her, this sort of thing makes people act funny. I've seen it. Still, not much I can help you with. But you know Byakuya best out of anyone outside his family right? Hisuna asked. Well, I wouldn't go that far. I guess I know him just about as well as I know you minus the fact that I've been to the Kukaki Manor a few times. I said. I just want him to like me. Hisuna said squirming in her seat. Well, that's some high hopes, but, you don't have to impress the guy with something. I said. Let me ask this first, does he even know you exist? Sensei, we've worked together a bunch of times with all that extra work you give us. It was interesting to see how this conversation was bringing out an ill-tempered side of Hisuna I didn't know existed. All right, turn down the heat. I told Hisuna. I guess the best thing you can do is just be yourself. See how things go and work up the courage to tell him how you feel. But trust me, if Byakuya is anything like me you'll have to be direct. I enforced. Okay. I'll try. Hisuna said. She got up off the chair and headed for the door. Thanks Sensei. She smiled at me. Anytime Hisuna. I told her. She shut the door and left. I was curious to see how things were going to play out from here so, since I didn't have any actual work to do, I tailed Hisuna to see if she would do anything. I had been in the 12th division for a while and I wanted to see if my stealth skills from 2nd division had gotten rusty. Is this really necessary Lelich? My Zanpakuto asked me. Well, if as a result of this Byakuya comes to my office next and asks if Hisuna likes him, I want to be able to have a better grasp of the situation than I do already. I responded. I thought you weren't Cupid. My Zanpakuto mocked me. Hey, whether it works out or he turns her down, in the end he'll have me to thank if he does come by. If he doesn't, at least I can see what's going on between them, perhaps work it to my advantage in the long run. I responded. Aren't nobles disallowed to marry outside nobility? Who says he has to marry her? I asked. Nobles are allowed to take mistresses. You know your time would be more wisely spent working on those blueprints. My Zanpakuto nagged. Says the woman who wants me to plan ahead. I returned. Fine, you know what, when you're behind in deadlines because you wanted to watch a relationship form rather than further yourself, don't come crying to me. My Zanpakuto left me alone. To be perfectly honest, I was really starting to hate how chatty she was. I heard that. Good, maybe you'll change. I followed Hisuna as closely as I could and eventually she met up with Byakuya in the kendo practice field. He was trying to pull off a really difficult technique I read about, but I myself was never able to do. The technique involved spinning around the opponent, striking at their flank and then placing both hands on the sword before performing 2 front flips at the target. So far Byakuya could only get one and he would lose the momentum he had built up to get the second one done properly. Hisuna approached him as he got up from off the ground, rubbing his sore head having failed the second front flip. "Are you okay, Byakuya Dano?" she asked him. "Do I look okay?" he snapped. Hisuna put a hand to his forehead and used healing Kido. Something I didn't know she could do, but wasn't surprised she could nonetheless. Healing Kido isn't a requirement for graduating, but it is recommended to be learned somewhere between the 2nd and 3rd year. "Better?" Hisuna asked. "Yeah, thanks Hisuna-san," he said to her. Still stuck on that second front flip. Hisuna was practically teasing him. "I'll get it eventually. If Gi-san and Ota-san can do it, then so can I," he declared. "You ever thought maybe it's because they're older than you are?" Hisuna joked. "If there's one thing I know about Byakuya, it's that he absolutely hated it when someone told him he had the inability to do something. I'd like to see you do better," he challenged Hisuna. "I bet you I can." She held out her hand. "Gimme." Byakuya tossed her the sword. Hisuna pulled it off flawlessly. "No fair, when could you do that?" Byakuya complained. "What's not fair about it? You're better than me at Kido, why can't I be better than you at something?" Hisuna asked him. Because I'm nobility," Byakuya excused. "Oh, so the soon-to-be great Kukaki Byakuya has to be the best at everything in order to feel secure, is that it?" Despite the formality in the way they addressed each other, they were using really informal speech. "No," Byakuya denied. "They really are well connected with each other," I noted. I pushed off the wall and headed back to my office. From my observation it was obvious Hisuna was closer to Byakuya than, well, anyone. No one ever got close to the kid like she did. Everyone distanced themselves from him because he was Kukaki Jinrei's grandson. It wasn't hard to figure out the rest. Hisuna, like me, didn't see Byakuya as a noble, she saw him as just another person in her life. He was on her level and, if their academic grades were anything to go by, both of them were rather intelligent. "Could you be any sappier?" my Zanpakuto asked. "Sappy? Me? When?" "You were about to comment how you think Byakuya's lucky that he has a friend." "I was not. I told my Zanpakuto. Lelich, who's the one able to read your heart and mind better than you are?" my Zanpakuto asked. I was silent. "That's what I thought," she gloated. 9 years later. The months and years went by until Byakuya, Hisuna, Susanna, and Rangiku all graduated from the Shino Academy. Byakuya became a 13th seed of the 13th Division. I congratulated him on reaching a higher rank than me right out of the academy. It wasn't hard to figure out why. Despite his lower Kido ability than mine, Byakuya was much better at the other 3 Soul Reaper arts than I was. Also, he knew his Zanpakuto's name, but he still was having issues with it. Hisuna also went to the 13th Division, becoming a 16th seed. She could have gotten higher with her skill level, not that I could have known, but I think she just wanted to follow Byakuya. Susanna went to the 6th Division. She became a 19th seed. Rangiku went to the 10th Division as an unseeded member. 10th Division. I sighed when I had heard the news. I wonder how everyone is doing there. The squad had been without a captain or a vice-captain for years now. From what I had heard, the top-seeded officers jointly shared responsibility, and Yukatake Teiko, Kukaki Teiko, and Hirako Teiko switched off in having their squads keep the 10th informed. Still, the squad was barely holding together. If things kept up like they were, we'd soon be known at the Goti I-12. Today though wasn't a day that I could dote on the past. For the past couple of months there had been reported sightings of missing souls in Rukanga. The bodies would evaporate and leave behind their clothes. I thought of 544 possible ways this could be occurring. Most of my theories had to do with Hashima, Aizen, Hollows, or a combination of the 3 in some way. Urahara-san had issued an order to try and figure out a way to stop this phenomenon. He and I both came to the same conclusion of strengthening the Reishi bonds within the soul so that they could be more closely held together. However, Only Urahara-san had actually come up with a spark of inspiration from that conclusion. I wasn't much of an inventor outside what I knew about high-definition technology. Something like this was beyond my comprehension a little. Things were proceeding normally all the way up to the late afternoon when Sarugaki Fukutaiko started bitching at Kurotsuka-senpai for ordering her around. "Fukutaiko, didn't the captain say he wanted to keep noise level to a minimum earlier? How about I keep the amount of blood in your nose to a minimum after I drive my foot through it? How would you like that?" she shouted. I show proper respect and all she does is complain. How this girl got to vice captain rank is beyond my intellectual capacity. I sighed. Urahara-san did come out of his quarters and address Sarugaki Fukutaiko. He was showing off what appeared to be the most realistic human mannequin I've ever seen. "What is that on your back, Teiko? A new type of Jigai?" "Yeah, you remember what I told you that Hirako Teiko told me this morning about how souls are disappearing from their bodies. I thought maybe if we put the soul into a human mold before it died then it might not vanish." Urahara-san responded. I cupped my hand to my chin. It sounds good, but what if this thing spreads through the body too quickly for a transfer? What then? I haven't gotten that far yet. Scientific history in the making takes a while. You of all people should understand that, right? Urahara-san asked. I nodded. Well, given time I'm sure you'll figure it out. Could one of you please speak a language we all understand instead of techno-babble? Sarugaki Fukutaiko pitched a fit. I'm tired of being left out of the conversation. Urahara-san was about to respond when there was a knock at the door. It was one of Meguro Mateiko's men, requesting to speak with Urahara-san. I opened the door to the lab to let him in at Urahara-san's request and the man gave us his report. The next stage in the phenomenon had started, Soul Reapers had become victims. Well, there go 33 theories. I thought to myself. I'll send key personnel tonight to help out. Urahara-san told the 9th Division officer. For now I would like you to go back and help your captain. Meguro Mateiko's officer was pleased with Urahara-san's assistance and left. Urahara-san's key personnel turned out to be Sarugaki Fukutaiko. As anyone could have expected, she got indignant. Why the hell do I have to go? She pointed to one of the other lab members, Akon. Why can't you send someone lower in rank than me? All you do is complain. You find everything disagreeable. Why don't you just quit being a vice captain already? I bit my lip from hearing this, trying not to burst out laughing. Akon sort of was asking for it when Sarugaki Fukutaiko flipped out. Why don't I just quit letting you live, Akon, you disrespectful little worm? What made the situation all the more comical was that while Sarugaki Fukutaiko sent kick after kick at the poor kid, she missed every shot. I couldn't help but snicker. I tried to cover it up, but Sarugaki Fukutaiko heard me. What the hell are you snickering at, huh? You think this is funny? Sorry, Hiri, Urahara-san spoke up, but you're the only one I can entrust with a task as important as this one. You know, if she doesn't want to do it, I'll volunteer. I said. You can trust me, can't you, sir? Urahara-san smiled at me. Thank you, Lelich, I appreciate the offer. Sarugaki Fukutaiko got on my case for almost no reason at all. I tried to be a peacekeeper and she just didn't want to let it stay. And just what is that supposed to mean? You don't think I can do it, huh, Lelich? She ranted. I'll show you. I'll do this so good that it'll make your existence so insignificant that that vest you wear won't mean a damn thing. Well, I wish you the best of luck. I smiled at her. God, you people make me sick. Sarugaki Fukutaiko slammed the door. I waited a few seconds for her riots to disappear from the area entirely before exasperating, well, amen, hallelujah and pizza, she's gone. Maybe now we can actually get some work done. I turned back to my workstation. Nice crisis management skills, Lelich. Urahara-san complimented. I looked back at Urahara-san. Well, if there's one thing I know about the Fukutaiko after all these years, it's that she has an ego 3 times the size of a blimp. She's a perpetual firecracker with an extremely short fuse. Agreeing with her and saying things to avoid conflict entirely are the best ways to go, in my opinion. You know you're going to make a really good captain one of these days, you know that. Urahara-san smiled at me. Captain. I thought. Images of that nightmare of mine flooded through my head. I started to wonder if perhaps my vision was a premonition of some sort. Originally I thought it would be impossible since I didn't even know Shikai, and since Bankai took 10 years by the time I became a captain, Colin would already be married with children. However, from research by some of our squad members, it's entered into the realm of possibility. Time moves forward in the Soul Society at a fixed rate, but outside the Soul Society each world moves at its own pace. There was no data collection on Earth yet, and there probably wouldn't be for a while since our research teams were still in star clusters beginning with the letter F, but until then I kept wondering. By the time I snapped out of my thoughts and became conscious of my surroundings, the next thing I heard was a loud racket of a wooden gong being hit with a mallet. Announcements came over the loudspeakers our squad had installed all throughout the division and set up in the 1st Division. The announcement was for all squad captains to meet at the Squad 1 barracks. I looked out the window. Night had already fallen. I didn't realize I had been so wrapped up in my work and thoughts. I waited patiently for Urahara-san to return from the meeting. I was the only one who seemed to be interested in what was going on. What happened? I asked him in earnest. If you want to know, come into my office, he said. Whatever had happened, he sounded depressed. I did as he requested and he spoke and I listened. Meguro Mateiko and Kunifuku Taiko's Ryatsus have disappeared from their investigation spot. Hirako Taiko, Odoribashi Taiko, Aikawa Taiko, Yodomaru Fukutaiko, and Ashoda Hachigen of the Kido Corps were sent to investigate. 9th Division is down. Sending captains? And they even have the Kido Corps involved. This situation has gotten really bad. But wait, why do you sound so depressed? I asked. When Urahara-san didn't respond, I summarized my facts and put together a sound hypothesis. Oh, I see where this is going. You're worried about Saragaki Fukutaiko. You wanted to go out there, but I'm sure someone stopped you. Yuruaki perhaps. Urahara-san didn't say anything, but his silence told me I was right. Knowing Urahara-san though, he wasn't going to take no for an answer. Well, you're the captain, so I have no right to order you around, so I just want to leave you with some advice: don't do or not do anything you'll regret. I did get a reaction from him from this, and he turned to look at me, intrigued. I think I'll be staying up late tonight. If you need me, I'll be in the lab. I knew Urahara-san wouldn't need me. Knowing him, he'd leave with his Ryatsu masked and make off to the Rokanga. I put a bug near his door and listened to it for sounds and slight movements. I also kept an eye on his Ryatsu. The moment I felt it disappear, I knew he was going to strike out into Rokanga. I wasn't going to follow him, but I know someone who would want to. As fast as I could, I made haste towards Division 2. However, when I reached Yuruaki's den, only So-iPhone was there. So-iPhone. I was confused. Lelich? What are you doing here? She asked me. I don't have time to explain. Where's Yuruaki? I asked. She told me to come back to the squad and take messages. She's still at the Squad 1 barracks awaiting further orders. Did something happen? She asked. No, but something will if I don't get a hold of her. Can you take me to her? I requested. So-iPhone nodded. If this is about that idiot Urahara Kisuk, you bet I want Yuruaki-sama to hear about it. Good, let's go, I said. 1st Division. So-iPhone led me right to Yuruaki as fast as both our legs could carry us. My stamina had improved a great deal over these last 9 years, so it was enough that I could sprint from one division to another without getting tired. 4 would be pushing it, and halfway around the Siratai would be out of the question without a break. Lelich? What are you doing here? Yuruaki asked. I was panting when I reached her. Just because I could run without collapsing didn't mean that there was no strain, especially since I had to push myself to keep up with So-iPhone's pace. Urahara-san, Rokanga. Yuruaki held up her hand, indicating I didn't need to say any more. I get it, Kisuk went after Hiyori, right? She asked. I nodded. Ugh, that idiot. Did what I say mean nothing to him at the captain's meeting? So-iPhone. Hi, Yuruaki-sama. So-iPhone poised herself upright. Go with Lelich back to the 12th Division. Both of you wait there for further instructions. Yuryuki told us. But Yuryuki-sama, if it's dangerous out there. If it's dangerous out there, there are 4 other captains and 2 vice-captains out in the field. I will be fine. You and Lelich however need to be prepared for unexpected developments. When you get there send a hell butterfly to tell the head captain that I'm going after Kisuk for being an idiot and that you two can act as a go-between him and me if he has any further instruction for me. Got it? She asked. Yes ma'am. Hi, Yuryuki-sama. 12th Division. I have a really bad feeling about this. I said to So-iPhone as we sat around the lab waiting for Yuryuki to come back with my captain. I was sitting at my desk in the lab and So-iPhone was wandering around the lab looking at all the stuff my division had been working on. Did Urahara Kisuk create all of this? She asked. He's by no means an idiot, and he's not always hands-on with everything we do, but most of my ideas only came to fruition because he was able to organize a team to get it to work. Don't pretend like you're not glad every division now has air conditioning, heat, automatic doors, and heated floor tiles to some degree throughout the division. I said. So-iPhone was silent. Forgive me for speaking rudely to a superior officer, but you never really did give the guy the benefit of the doubt. He may not have your level of professionalism, but he does a good job. Lelich So-iPhone's words were cut off by the lab shaking. The tremors were so fierce that both of fell to the floor. Our position could have been much more awkward, but it was kind of close for 2 people who were supposed to be friends. Both of us were flat on our stomachs, arms out in front of us. My right-left hand wound up being placed right on top of her right hand and our same side cheeks wound up getting pushed together, causing us both to close the eye on that side of our faces shut. I got up first and dusted myself off. You okay? I asked So-iPhone. She got up. I'm fine, just don't mention the position we were just in to anyone. Boy, aren't you two awfully familiar with each other? The last person that needed to comment on the situation for So-iPhone's sake just did. Why Yuryuki-sama? This isn't what it looks like. So-iPhone shouted. How did you get here and how long have you been standing there? I asked with a stern look on my face. That tremor you felt was Commander Tsukabishi teleporting us all in. Yuryuki stated. But teleportation Kido is forbidden by the Central 46. I informed. We know, but the situation is dire. Listen closely. Yuryuki explained to us what had happened out in Rukanga. How she had caught up with Urahara-san and Commander Tsukabishi before all 3 of them wound up confronting Aizen and 2 others at the scene. One of the others was Taisen Kaname, 5th seat of the 9th Division. Taisen's a traitor. I scowled. I think it's more likely that he's been an inside man for Aizen for the longest time. Yuryuki responded when I asked about this. I was more surprised when I learned that Jin was with Aizen during this. Lelich, relax, I know Jin was your student. Just calm down. Yuryuki stated. You couldn't have known. I laughed maniacally and covered my left eye as I brushed my hair back. I couldn't do anything else. Oh no, it's fine. I understand. I probably looked insane to Yuryuki and So-iPhone, but I perfectly understood what Jin was up to. So that's your angle, is it? I thought to myself. You did say you liked to swallow prey that looked interesting to you. So you're going to stab him right in the back while his guard's down, Jin, you are a fool. If you do that, you'll become just like him. Or perhaps, I never really knew you after all. A year and 2 days isn't really enough to get to know someone properly. Lelich, are you going to be okay? So-iPhone asked me. I composed myself on a dime and cleared my throat before speaking again. I had my arms folded behind my back as I spoke. I'll be fine. Just answer me this, Yuryuki, what is Urahara-san doing right now? Yuryuki went on to explain the rest of the situation and what Urahara was doing to solve it. You do realize Aizen's going to turn this back on us? I said. How can he? Yuryuki asked. This is the man who is Urahara's rival in chess. Something tells me your interference is exactly what he wanted out there. Hirako Teiko and the others weren't victimized by accident. Aizen handpicked them by reading the situation as it developed. I responded. How can you be so sure of this? Yuriuki asked. I know, because that is what I do if I were in Aizen's shoes. I stated. Lelouch, you're overly paranoid. I think you need to get some sleep. Yuriuki told me. Will you take something seriously for once? I shouted. My outburst was responded with a slap to the face by So-iPhone. How dare you speak to Yuriuki-sama like that? She scowled. I put a hand to where the stinging pain was coming from where So-iPhone hit me. Do what she said and get some rest. Have faith in your captain that everything will turn out alright. Tomorrow we will go out to Central 46 and prove to them what Aizen had to do with this. Don't you get it? If we wait he'll act first. If we act rashly and you're right we'll also be in hot water. Yuriuki reprimanded. I had to concede to her point. Look, you've been up for 20 hours straight according to Kisuke. You need to get some sleep, Lelouch. Grudgingly I turned my back and made to exit the lab. Fine. I spat. I went to bed, angry. I felt as if I had just fallen asleep when I felt someone shaking me awake. Lelouch. Lelouch, wake up. I opened my eyes, the sun was already out. It's morning already. I groaned. Damn it, Lelouch. Snap alert this instant. The person yelling at me was So-iPhone and she sounded rather distraught. My vision stopped being hazy. So-iPhone, what is it? Did Yuriuki ask you to wake me? I said, wiping the sleep from my eyes. No. And that's because Yuriuki-sama, Commander Tsukabishi and Urahara Kisuke were just arrested by the Central 46. So-iPhone shouted. Now I was alert and paying attention. What happened? I asked, scowling. Now that's the Lelouch I want to be talking to right now. So-iPhone commented. She cleared her throat and spoke professionally. I don't know why they were taken away, but I have a good feeling you were right about what you said last night. I'm sorry. I had a gut feeling you were right, but I just couldn't argue with Yuriuki-sama. So-iPhone was teetering on the edge of breaking down into hysterics. Getting hysterical isn't going to solve anything. I told So-iPhone. If you came to wake me, I'm sure you're expecting something more out of me than just giving me bad news. Lelouch, besides Yuriuki-sama, you're the only person I can really trust to ask this out of all of the Soul Society, and so, please, save Yuriuki-sama. So-iPhone was on the verge of tears. If you don't, I'll do it myself, but I was hoping I could count on you. You don't have to start crying to get me to help you. My captain is in trouble too and Aizen set them up. I gave So-iPhone my hand. We'll save them together. However, if we act, we won't be able to save their jobs. Actually, even if we don't act, all three of them are probably going to get stripped of their positions. What? Is it that bad? So-iPhone started to panic. If you're going to panic, you won't be of any use. If you want me to help, then get a hold of yourself. I shouted. So-iPhone straightened up immediately. That's better. Now, if my hunch is correct, Aizen will have turned this holification business back on Urahara. That being the case, Urahara's punishment would be banishment. Yuriuki would be pinned as Urahara's accomplice and possibly be banished along with him. Tessai will just get a slap on the wrist for using Forbidden Kido. A decade or less in prison level 3 would be sufficient if I understand the sentencing structure properly. The only question I have to ask is this. Are you sure you want to do this? Protecting Yuriuki-sama is my job. Where she goes, I go. She promised me that we would always be together. So-iPhone told me. My hand still extended to So-iPhone, I said. Then let's go save them. She clasped hold of my hand and we shook hands. Now then, I thought as I looked around the room, if this is going to work, I'm going to need quite a few things from the lab. I spent a few minutes taking objects from the laboratory. My inventory included 2 Ryotsu cloaking cloaks, a prototype vitality serum Kuratsuka Senpai had been working on, my contact lens case, a hyperspace capsule with a field kit stuffed into it, and a prototype 2-way radio helmet device I had begun to work on for both So-iPhone and me. I also grabbed a few smoke bombs. When iPhone and I were suited up and ready to go, I then activated Bakudo 26, Kyoko on both of us. Our Ryotsu was already cloaked thanks to our cloaks, but for my plan to work we had to be hidden from view. I feel ridiculous. iPhone said to me. This get-up is so drab. Hey, it served me well in life. In death it'll continue to do so. Now let's go. Central 46. iPhone and I arrived right on schedule and she took out the guards, completely avoiding notice. I went on ahead and removed the invisibility I had shrouded myself in and flung open the meeting hall doors of the Central 46. My figure was distorted by the light entering the dark room, but even then my disguise made it impossible to identify me. What are you doing in here? You can't come in here. Council is in session. That's where you're wrong. I declared. You believe that you all are justly punishing these criminals when in fact. Guards, arrest that man. So much for my speech. I grumbled. You'll never take me. For I am the one, the only Zero. Master Miracle Worker. I threw the smoke bombs and everyone began coughing. My radio helmet, which would relay every last word I said to iPhone, in its prototype stage, was modeled after my own Zero helmet. Urahara's Ryotsu cloaking made a perfect substitution for my cape. And despite the fact that I was well over a foot taller than iPhone, both of us looked exactly alike because our physiques were similar. Of course we'd never be caught. iPhone was too limber and I had taken the vitality serum Kuratsuka Senpai had been working on. My muscles would be hyper-stimulated, allowing me to move in at speeds and bend in ways that even Suzaku would be jealous of. I had no idea of the side effects, but I was sure Anohana Teiko could diagnose any side effects I could contract. Of course the stimulation was temporary, but it would be enough. S1. Now. I signaled. iPhone came running up the corridor behind me, leapt over me and landed down the stairs near Yoriyuki, Urahara-san, and Commander Tsukabishi. Everything's going to be okay. She said to the three of them. I told her to pretend as if we didn't know Yoriyuki and the others, not until we could ensure their safety. My partner and I are here to get you out of here. iPhone broke the shackles on all three of the people we were rescuing and told them to get going. We went off as a group of 5 until Yoriyuki, Urahara-san, and Commander Tsukabishi took off using Shunpo. iPhone and I lingered in order to draw the attention on us. iPhone went west. I went east. I knew iPhone would be okay, as for me I had to keep running and see if I could either shake my pursuers off or isolate them, and me, from onlooking eyes and use geese to get me out of the jam I was in. Lelich. Oh great. What now? I asked. I want to commend you on acting as you are. You have an enemy to fight and I have read your heart and mind. You have awoken to who you truly are. And for that I am offering to lend my power to you, to help your plan succeed. It was going to succeed whether you helped me or not, but I could always use a failsafe. So then go ahead and tell me, what is your name? I asked her. She told me her name and how to activate her power. Got it. I said. I kept running only to find the drug beginning to wear off. Damn, so soon. I started to wonder if perhaps I didn't use the full dosage and thereby minimized the effects. It didn't matter now. I stopped running and the guards caught up with me. To prevent iPhone from hearing me I switched off my radio. Now then Zero, or whatever your name is, come quietly. It's obvious you've tired yourself out. Give yourself up and we'll promise to lighten your sentence. The guards said. There have been many who have tried to apprehend me. All of them have failed. You're just a number of the many men and women I have thwarted with my escape attempts. I said. My own helmet had come with a slot near the eye, just like my old one. I opened it to reveal my geese. All of you. I, Zero, command you. Obey me. My geese afflicted the guards and they said in a monotone. Yes, Master Zero. Now then. My first order, drop your weapons. They obeyed. Stand at attention. They obeyed. I went for my Zanpakuto. Now, watch as I release my sword. Rally and motivate. Iin Tamashi. Undying Soul, I drew it out and swung my Zanpakuto over my back, transforming it into an exact replica of my original Zero cape, which I quickly fastened to my shoulders and neck. I held out my hand towards my targets. And now all of you will feel the sting of the power of Zero. Kokoro Hase. Mind Crush. A telepathic wave was sent out from my hand and rang through the ears of my targets, severely damaging their minds, and since their willpower had been reduced to garbage by the power of my geese, their heads exploded. Finished with my actions, I used Shunpo to a nearby location and contacted So iPhone. 0 to S1, come in S1. I communicated. This is S1, my pursuers have been shaken off and I'm waiting near our refugees for further orders. They are inside a special pavilion carved into the side of a mountain. So iPhone responded. Wait for me there and I'll join you shortly. I told So iPhone. Remove your cloak and helmet and put it in a nearby bush. No witnesses allowed. I got it. So iPhone hung up on me. I used the hyperspace capsule and switched it with the helmet and cloak I had on me with the field kit that was already inside it. I then set up the field kit to make it look like I had just come upon the dead bodies of the Central 46 Guard members during my field study and sent a Hell Butterfly to the 4th Division. I then proceeded to head for So iPhone's location, where I then stuffed her gear into my capsule. Let's go pay a visit to those we rescued, shall we? I asked. So iPhone nodded and agreed. Judging from the riot, So Commander Tsukabishi had put up a triple-layered barrier, but I wasn't about to let that stop me. I didn't know what I, a mere Kido practitioner, could do against the commander of the Corps himself, but my attempts to break in would send one person out of the 3 to deal with So iPhone and me. I was right, and So iPhone had to stop Yoriyuki from nearly crippling me with a roundhouse kick to the neck. So iPhone, Lelich. Yoriyuki was completely confused. What? How did you find us? It's not too hard to keep tabs on people you just rescued. I said. Wait. Rescued? You two did that? Yoriyuki was stunned. Pretty impressive, right? I asked. Pretty stupid is more like it. Yoriyuki was not happy. Do you two have any idea the kind of trouble you put yourselves in? I don't know about So iPhone, but I've covered my tracks to make it impossible to trace things back to me. I stated. That's a mite arrogant of you, you know. Yoriyuki responded. Hey, you should be grateful I saved you from banishment without spiritual power. If it wasn't for So iPhone and me. Yoriyuki reached out and pat both mine and So iPhone's head. You're right, thank you. She smiled. Both of you. She looked around and then waved us inside. It isn't safe to discuss things out here. Follow me. Yoriyuki explained to So iPhone and me what her plans were. She, Urahara-san, and Commander Tsukabishi were all going to hide out in the world of the living, and one day they vowed that we'd all get back at Aizen. Yoriyuki-sama, are you sure? Lelich and I can dig up evidence. We can prove you're innocent. So iPhone pleaded. Yoriyuki wiped away a tear from underneath So iPhone's eye. I'm sorry, little B, but this is how it has to be. Then. So iPhone tensed up and then shouted. Then I'm going with you. What? So iPhone, you can't, that's idiotic and stupid and it's what you promised me. You told me, you said we would always be together. My job is protecting Yoriyuki-sama, not any other member of the Shihoin clan. I will go anywhere with you. My home is not the Godei or the family, but trees, grass, and civilization around you. So iPhone was about ready to cry. Yoriyuki gave So iPhone a sympathetic smile and put her arms around her and held her to her. So iPhone began to cry. Shhhh. Yoriyuki soothed her. It's okay, little B, you can come with me. I will keep my promise to you. Yoriyuki waited until So iPhone calmed down before addressing me. What about you, Lelich? She asked. Are you coming too? I shook my head. No, my place is here. If I'm going to take down Aizen, I'm going to do it where I can keep a close eye on him. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. You sure are doing a fine job of pulling off that cliché. Urahara-san noted. Will we ever see each other again? I asked. Aizen's going to have to reveal his true nature eventually. Yuriuki said. And when he does, you can be sure we will meet again. Lelich. Urahara walked towards me and put a hand on my shoulder. Good luck. Thanks, Taeko. I'm sure I'll need it. I said. You should probably get going. Commander Tsukabishi stated. Things will look suspicious if you stay too long here. If you need help working up a story, you can write that you and I were working together and I betrayed you and joined with Yuriuki-sama. So iPhone told me. Well, part of that is true. I said. She was, after all, joining up with her idol. I turned and headed to leave. Give my regards to Hiroko Taeko when he regains consciousness. Tell him that I'm not going to let Aizen go without receiving his just desserts. Will do. Urahara-san said. See you around, Lelich. Goodbye everyone, may you all stay safe. I said and left. In the time that followed, I managed to avoid pursuit entirely. I even managed to come out smelling like a rose. In my report I wrote what So iPhone had told me. I wrote that we had noticed our fleeing captains escaping justice while I was on my field study and she betrayed me at the last possible moment. I also forged, using the computer, to both type the assignment and cut and paste Urahara-san's signature onto the assignment sheet. I then traced it with a pen to make it look authentic. The record keepers would never know the difference. I also bargained with Kuratsuka-senpai to allow me to clean out Urahara-san's office alone when Central 46 gave the order. The only thing he wanted in return was when I mentioned that I had borrowed one of his vitality serums as part of my field test and would give a report on how it functioned for me. He agreed to my deal and then I went to go to 4th Division to have myself looked at to see if there were any side effects to the serum that could be detected. As I sat in the waiting room, I began to think about everything that had happened in the span of the last 7 hours. Aizen. I thought to myself. You may have defeated Urahara-san, but now you face an opponent who will trip you up at every turn, stop you at every juncture and counter your every move. You face an opponent who can play by your rules and settings. From now on you face me. To be continued. Chapter 15, Lelich vs Aizen. The rivalry begins. Lelich's POV. It's been 3 days since Urahara-san was axed from the Soul Society. Things have been crazy for the past couple days. The Gotei is in chaos. Due to the incidents that have happened over the past couple of decades, we're down 6 captains and 4 lieutenants. To add to the problems, Squad 2's vice captain, Omada Marinoshin, was put on lockdown in the Maggot's Nest as a liability due to Yuriuki's involvement in the incident. The Shihoin noble family nearly collapsed because of Yuriuki's involvement. If it wasn't for Yamamoto Taeko stepping in, Squad 2 would have lost its connection to the Onmitsukido. Right now I was cleaning out Urahara-san's office as I had bargained with Kuratsuka-senpai. After entering, I locked myself in his lab and used his computer to do a few things, the least of which was to modify his typewritten last will and testament that left Mayuri in charge of the research bureau. I didn't take that inheritance away from Mayuri. I didn't have the ability to coincide with that responsibility, and on top of that it would look too suspicious. What I did do was add to the will to leave the department to Mayuri, but to leave key, named items, reports, research materials, to me, even if I moved to a different squad. Some of the reports would no doubt be appropriated by Central 46, so I made copies for myself. I'd give them the original. If I was going to take down Aizen, I was going to need evidence, just like Akari Taeko did when she was tracking Hashima. I also wanted to work with some of Urahara-san's more high-profile, but legal, experiments for the betterment of the Soul Society. It wouldn't look suspicious that these things were set aside for me. Without me adding this into the will, it would be up to Kuratsuka to divvy up. And since I already knew Urahara-san before he transferred, carrying out some of his better research would like he was dumping it onto someone he had trusted. After all, I was the 4th most important person in the research bureau. When Omada Marinoshin was incarcerated, I wondered why the same wasn't done for me, but apparently the chain of command was so wide between Urahara-san and me that Central 46 didn't have the proper grounds to suspend me without evidence that I was involved. The only evidence that did exist pointed to the contrary. Said evidence was my report that So iPhone had betrayed me when she and I attempted to go after Urahara-san and Yuriuki when I noticed Central 46 out in the field. I was about halfway through my cleanup routine when there was a knock on the door. Who is it? I asked. Now that's a voice I haven't heard in a long time. How are you doing, Lamperouge Lelich? A calm, collected voice on the other side of the door said. I recognized it. Eisen. What's he doing here? I composed myself. I had to pretend like I didn't know anything. I went over to the door and opened it. Eisen Fukotaiko. What a complete surprise. I acted friendly. What are you up to? I was going through some of my captain's things and found some paperwork that had to be delivered to Urahara-san. When I spoke with your third seat, he said just to leave it in the office. However, I didn't expect the door to be locked. Eisen stated. I like not being disturbed unannounced when I'm working. If you were ever my superior, perhaps you would know that. I told Eisen. Yes, well, part of the paperwork includes me retrieving something of my captain's from your captain's. Mind if I come in and retrieve it? I don't buy that for a second. Sorry, but I'm still cleaning out my captain's office. Why don't you leave the paperwork with me and I'll come by and drop it off at your division later? Surely a vice captain like you doesn't have time to waste in a musty old office looking for a trinket of his fallen captain. How very astute. Eisen commented. Very well, Lelich. Eisen handed me the paperwork. Please do drop by later. I would hate to think you are irresponsible. Does he suspect me of something? How can he? We haven't seen each other since I arrived here. I covered my tracks flawlessly. Did Jin rat me out? I suppose I could try to find out. I hear my young prodigy is now your squad's third seat. Oh really? I had no idea you were his teacher. Jin doesn't really talk much about his academy days. Eisen responded. Really now? I asked, pretending like I found that hard to believe. Every time I ask he'll always say, with that heavy accent of his, why are you so interested? That's in the past now. The only place to look forward is the future, you know. Eisen stated. What he said did sound like something Jin would say. Still, perhaps I'd talk to Jin myself, see if I could get anything out of him. You should probably get back to work. The Godiai is in enough chaos as it is without one of the remaining vice captains doting around on a dead man's words. I pretended to care for Eisen's well-being. Hirako Teiko was by no means dead, and of course Eisen knew that, but that was the cover story that was spread about to the rest of the Godiai. Urahara Kisuk, Tsukubishi Tessai, and Shihoin Yoriyuki all had been exiled to the world of the living while Hirako Teiko and the others had been disposed of as hollows. So iPhone was considered missing in action. In reality, Urahara-san, Commander Tsukubishi, Yoriyuki, and So iPhone had all gone to the world of the living together and were planning to hide out there, separated from Hirako Teiko and the others. I suppose I should. Eisen said to me. You know, Lelich, you should consider perhaps transferring to the 5th Division one of these days. Your Kido would serve you well there. You just want me there so you can coerce me into joining you, and if you can't brainwash me, you'll dispose of me. Sorry Eisen, but I'm not that stupid. I'll think about it. I lied, but said it in a way that didn't indicate I was. See you around then. Eisen left the division and I got back to work. Lelich's inner world. Hado 73, Soren Sakasui. I fired the Twin Lotus Blue Flame Kido at Iin Tamashi, who was running around my inner world so fast I could barely keep up with her. She had challenged me to my own game of Kido tag, but she wasn't attacking me because, as the Soul Reaper, only I could use Kido. I was only allowed to use Hados to subdue her, but I could use any that I wanted to try and tag her. I missed, as I had every other time. There was no time limit to our game, but I was starting to get frustrated with all my missed shots. Listen, Lelich. She said as she zipped around my inner world. You're never going to hit me if you keep trying to target me. Your reflexes are too subdued. Your attacks are too slow. Is she trying to give me a hint on how to beat her? I thought. Hado 31, Shakkeiho. I fired the red flame cannon at Iin Tamashi, but again I missed. However, as I watched her dodge, I noticed that she would speed up the moment I aimed to attack her. Wait, I think I see now. I realized. I prepared my next attack. I did the chant and followed Iin Tamashi, whilst I chanted, to see if my hypothesis about her movement patterns was correct. Yeah, Lord. Mask of flesh and bone, flutter of wings, yeah, who bears the name of man. Iin Tamashi was at my 9 o'clock position. Truth and temperance, upon this sinless wall of dreams unleash but slightly the wrath of your claws. She was at my right flank. Hato 33, Sakasui. I fired not where Iin Tamashi was, but where I predicted she would be. I got her right in the shoulder and knocked her to the ground. My inner world had changed since the last time I was here. Instead of being on the ground, I was now standing on a polished surface that had me at the center height of the pieces. I could also see about 1/4 of the entire board. It must have had to do with my awakening. As Iin Tamashi got up, she teleported in front of me, completely healed. Good work. She told me. You've passed my little test. I think I get what the point of all this was. You wanted me to attack not where you were, but where you would be. I commented. Iin Tamashi nodded. You are no longer in your world, Lelich. You will no longer face opponents on equal ground as you, and you will not always have comrades whom you can rely on to take down these stronger opponents. You must use your knowledge of tactics to your own advantage, to protect yourself from stronger opponents. If this were a real fight, you would have been dead by now with all those missed shots at the speed I was moving at, but that is the speed that many higher seats are capable of, as you are no doubt aware. I nodded in agreement. If you cannot strike back, sometimes you must guard yourself from unfriendly strikes. And so, to protect yourself, you must do so with your own 2 hands. I hate it when you're cryptic. I sighed. And that's why I like being cryptic. Iin Tamashi responded. I gave her a disapproving look and then tried to figure out what her words meant. I closed my eyes and thought. If you cannot strike back, you must guard yourself. Well, guarding is possible if you have a shield of some kind. But to do so with my own hands, If you give up, we can revisit this lesson later until you are ready. I heard Iin Tamashi's voice. I don't quit. I said, eyes still closed. You are so stubborn. She sighed. Protect myself with my own 2 hands, I thought about this for a long time, standing in the middle of my inner world trying to figure out what sort of power Iin Tamashi was trying to teach me. Shield, protect, hands, grr, it finally hit me. I got what she was saying. I opened my eyes. I think I get it. I said. Then show me. Iin Tamashi's form began to dissolve and she formed herself into my sword. You know what to do first. Yes. I nodded. Rally and motivate, Iin Tamashi. I swung my sword over my back, turning it into my zero cape, to which I then tied the cape to my Shiakusho and brought up the right side of the cape to me, posing momentarily. You don't really have to do that. Iin Tamashi commented. Part of awing your allies and enemies alike is having a good presentation. I retorted. Now then, I released my hold on the inside of my cape and threw it out behind me. Let's see if I really understand what you were trying to tell me. I focused my mind and pushed my hand forward, creating, for a flash of a second, an energy shield created from my own Ryuryoku. I did it a few more times, projecting barriers in different directions and angles with either of my hands. The barriers would flow out a few meters and then dissipate, but they lingered for a few seconds before disappearing entirely. When I finished enjoying my new technique, I let Iin Tamashi go and she returned to being a spirit. Very good. Iin Tamashi complimented. If you practice with this technique well enough, you'll be able to stabilize the shield and use it to protect you until you manually disable it. We've been getting along really well lately, haven't we? I asked. It's all because you have started walking on the path you've always been destined to walk on, the path of a noble demon. You strive to reach an end that benefits all of those around you, and you don't care whose lives must be sacrificed, crippled, or damaged in order to do it. You make alliances of convenience, and only a small circle of people do you truly trust, but you keep them at an arm's length, lest they know the true you. It is that Lelich whose soul has been carved into me, and it is that Lelich whom I will continue to grant power to. Never forget who you truly are, Lelich. I won't. I know now that I am not a saint. I was never meant to become one. Akari Taiko's death helped open my eyes, and Urahara-san's banishment brought my true self out of me once again. I will strive to reach as high in the chain of command of the Gotei as I possibly can, but that doesn't mean I'm going to just sit around while people like Aizen and Hashima, who abuse their power and use it to hurt others, exist. Using So iPhone to help rescue Urahara-san and the others was the first of many plans I will execute. Aizen will be brought down. I will expose him for the scum that he is. I preached. And that's what I like to hear. Iin Tamashi said. Everything started to go white. I was leaving my inner world. My surroundings returned to the garden outside the laboratory. It's been 17 years since Urahara-san was banished. Tsun Kaname became captain of the 9th Division, and Luska Stefan and Oda Makakendra, my old comrades from 2nd Division, became the captain and vice-captain of the division respectively. Without actually being in the division, it was impossible for me to know who took over their old positions or even who replaced Urahara-san and So iPhone. Also, Aizen's been rather quiet. However, quiet is good. It gives me time to prepare to act against him. With the research materials, reports, and belongings I had been given to me, I managed to learn several things of the utmost importance. For starters, Urahara-san's Hogyaku, which he had used to save Hirako Taiko and the others, according to his notes, was useless for the longest time, but then one day started working just fine. As if that weren't suspicious enough, the item that Aizen said belonged to his former captain, that Urahara had, turned out to be the Hogyaku. Shinji's report described it as a multifaceted orb no bigger than the palm of the hand. After looking at the Hogyaku's diagrams, I was able to determine that this was what Aizen was after. I turned the lab upside down, but thankfully, came up empty. Whether or not I had found the Hogyaku, I wasn't going to give it to Aizen anyway, but the fact that it wasn't amongst Urahara's things could only mean that it was in his possession, something Aizen obviously would have concluded when I told him I couldn't find his captain's trinket, which is what anyone else would have thought it to be. The fact that Aizen was that careless, or what I would view as careless, showed that he didn't suspect me to be working against him at all. To make certain of this, I geased our squad's 6th seat with the order to draft paperwork to be delivered to Vice Captain Aizen Sosuke of Division 5 to be delivered by me whenever you hear me say the words, "I need a new list," and make it of a different variety each time I ask you. So far, said order has worked like a charm. I've brought paperwork to Aizen at irregular intervals over the last 17 years. Even when he upgraded to becoming captain of the 5th Division and put Jin as his vice captain, my actions didn't change. A lot of times I'd alter the paperwork with my computer and pass it along to an unseated officer and bug them with a special bug that let me record visualization and audio. If Aizen was now going to suspect anyone as moving against him, it would be the 6th seat of my division. I avoided contact with Jin. Not only could I not trust him, but there was no guarantee Aizen wouldn't listen into our conversation. After meeting with Aizen enough times, I've been able to deduce that he's the type of person that doesn't trust anyone, which means he's got his ear as low to the ground as I do. Of course I have mine low to the ground to move against Aizen. Aizen has his low to the ground in order to pick up people like me. Of course if he wants to pick me up, he'd have to get all the way to the floor and beg for forgiveness like a dog. I sometimes would find myself thinking of what I would do with Aizen once I had exposed his plans. If he was locked up, I found myself thinking how fun it would be to geese the guards and go visit him in prison, first to gloat and then to humiliate him. Another idea I've had was to turn him into my loyal subject and use him to help Yuna track down Hashima. Aizen went around putting on a facade like I did. However, unlike his facade, no one could see through mine. Both Jin and I knew what Aizen was like in the dark. In other, less vengeful, news, Kuratsuka Senpai was now Kuratsuka Taiko to me. He had managed to master Bankai a decade ago and had been my division's captain ever since. The 10th Division still hadn't found a proper captain to replace Akari Taiko. No one had learned Bankai to take her place. However, I heard that Ashine Senpai had managed to reach the qualifications for becoming the squad's vice captain. At least the 10th Division wasn't looking at potential collapse now. 7th Division was now being led by Akomamura Seijin. He was an old friend of Tsun and he was also very respectful and indebted to the head captain. I had thought about telling him about the skeletons in Tsun Taiko's closet, but I didn't have evidence to support my accusations. Division 3 still didn't have a captain. The GoDI was still down 2 captains and 4 lieutenants, the fourth one being that there was an empty spot in Kiganjo Taiko's squad, and it bothered head captain Yamamoto to no end. I knew this because Kuratsuka Taiko came in after a meeting one day, ranting about how the head captain was making a great big deal out of nothing. Kuratsuka Taiko really didn't care much about anything going on within the GoDI so long as it didn't affect his research. He always talked about how he wanted interesting research subjects. He said that working with GGI technology and creating advancements in technology were child's play and that he wanted something a little more challenging to create. His current project, he was trying to see if he could grow an artificial soul. As I walked back into the lab, Kuratsuka Taiko waved me over, saying he needed my help with something. In these last 17 years I had ranked up 2 levels to a 13th seat. Kuratsuka Taiko he was thankful for my willingness to cooperate and dedication to the research bureau. He always enjoyed it when I brought up a new idea at the squad meetings. He often commented how he wished the higher seats were as interested in science and technology as I was. Truth be told though, the Soul Society was just behind in the times from where I was. I was simply pulling blueprints based off of things I remembered from when I was alive. Of course, I never told anyone that. I didn't like to give more information than I ever felt was necessary. The less people knew about me, the easier it was for me to operate behind the scenes against Aizen. As I followed my captain into his lab, he showed me a tank that was filled with green fluid of some kind. In front of the tank was an apparatus and there was a small petri dish placed upon a modified computer disk drive. Attached to the tank, by clamps with electricity running through them, was one of Urahara-san's old prototype, Skinless Gigaeus. What's all this for? I asked. I'm sick and tired of the head captain getting persnickety about how squads 8, 9, 11, and 12 are in desperate need of a vice captain, so I thought of a way to create an artificial Soul Reaper using GGI and Jikunga technology. Kuratsuka Taiko stated. Wait, so you mean to create a soul that is a Soul Reaper all on its own? You're going to use the body of a GGI and the life force from a Jikunga to construct a substantial life form. It sounds interesting, but just how are you going to pull it off? I asked. Of all of Captain Kuratsuka's ideas, while this one was definitely one of his crazier ideas, at least it wasn't nightmare-inducing. Some of things he's done sometimes matched or surpassed the recurring nightmare of Colin, the Hollow, and the captain version of me that I have. The science behind it would take hours to explain, I'm afraid. The reason I called you in here though, was so you could help me finish the production. My captain told me. What do you want me to do? I asked. Certain components that could have been used to perfect this experiment forced me to construct this differently than I originally intended. Such components, after construction was done, I realized were in your possession. However, rather than bother you for the components and start again from scratch, I have another way you can help me complete this procedure. My captain responded. What would these components have done? I asked. That is a simple question with a simple answer. Kuratsuka Taiko stated. Had I used these components from the very beginning, I would only need one sample of DNA and I would have been able to construct the soul to have Vice Captain Ryotsu straight from its birth. However, because I do not have these components, I need a second sample of DNA, and since you're the one who prevented me from crafting this machine outside my original design, I think it's only fitting that your DNA be used as a substitute. Who else's DNA is being used here? I asked. Mine, of course. Originally the components you have would have allowed me to create a life form in my own image and tone down my Ryotsu to just Vice Captain level. However, I am in need of a second DNA sample to act as a balancer. Your Ryotsu is far inferior to mine. Therefore it will act as the perfect counterpart. Just how much DNA do you need? I asked. A couple of ounces of your blood should be sufficient. Kuratsuka Taiko told me. He held up his left hand where there was dried blood on his upper arm. I had to use my entire left hand and regrow it for my offering. So your DNA will overshadow my own. I noted. Is that a problem? This is my experiment after all. Kuratsuka Taiko stated. However, if you're so interested in this experiment, perhaps you would be willing to take the time to teach it. Teach it? I asked. The soul we are creating will be able to function and have normal human understanding, but it needs to understand many things before Central 46 said they would okay making it our squad's vice captain. Kuratsuka Teiko stated. What will I need to teach it? I asked. Since this creation will have no memories, it will be without a sense of right and wrong, self-awareness, morals, or understand proper human etiquette. And since I am far too busy to teach such things myself, perhaps you'd be willing to do it yourself. Kuratsuka Teiko answered. It's times like these I wish people did know what I was up to. Then again, I cupped my hand to my chin and thought about this. If I'm the one teaching this creature everything it will need to know about life, I can shape its mind exactly how I want it. Although I will be lower rank, to this creature I am its superior and therefore it will be my puppet on a string. I grinned devilishly. Kuratsuka Teiko, you have no idea how much of a gift you've dumped into my hands. Several ounces of blood coming right up. Kuratsuka Teiko handed me a scalpel to which I made an incision in the palm of my hand about 3 mm deep and 1 cm wide. I dripped several drops of blood onto the petri dish as instructed. I bandaged my cut up with some gauze and watched Kuratsuka Teiko turn on the machine. So how long until this creation of ours is born? I asked. It should take anywhere from half a year to a year and a half. The body should be fully developed by 3 months and after that I will have to artificially give it factual knowledge about the world. Kuratsuka Teiko stated. And just what are we going to call this being? I asked my captain. What's all this wee stuff about? You are helping me with my experiment. I am the mastermind here. Very well. I'll just act as the godfather I suppose. I eased off to keep my captain from getting mad at me. Rule of thumb in the division was that if you got on our captain's bad side you wound up his next research subject for whatever weird drug he was working the kinks out of. All the world was a laboratory to him and he didn't even exclude himself from that rule. I will let you know when the experiment is complete. In the meantime you should just go about your business as if things were normal. Kuratsuka Teiko told me. Yeah sure. I said and left the lab. I didn't have any work to do and in the 26 years that the Department of Research and Development had been around I had managed to help the department to get the Goatee I-13 to be rather tech-savvy so there was no reason to go back to my office. I wasn't hungry so there was no sense in going to the mess hall. It was the first time in a long time I found myself so bored. I decided to take a walk, hoping that maybe I'd find something or someone of interest. As I crossed into 10th Division's territory I stopped and took a look around. I know I've been in 12th Division longer than I was here, but I sort of feel like, my whole life is here. I thought to myself. Your roots are here Lelich as are said memories. The 10th Division felt like a family to you, a family you were forced to leave in the interest of self-preservation. Yeah, I suppose so. I agreed. As I closed communication I could have sworn I could hear rushing footsteps and someone shouting. It began to get louder as it approached my position. When I sensed that whatever was coming my way was about to crash into me, I sidestepped instinctively, causing a Soul Reaper running up from behind me to clamber along the ground. If you were trying to tackle me, I criticized, you lose the element of surprise by letting out a war cry. The Soul Reaper pushed up from off the ground. I wasn't trying to attack you. It was a male Soul Reaper with a deep, adult voice. My visitor turned around, showing himself to be a man with black hair and a beard. He gave me a thumbs up. I was giving you the Ishin style nice to see you again old friend greeting. I knew who this was now. I grinned. Well, look what changes the last few decades have brought. I hardly recognized you as Ishin senpai. Oh so you remember your good old buddy Ishin. Ishin senpai was ecstatic. Nice to know I haven't been forgotten. Of course it's Ishin Fukutaiko now. Ah yes of course, where are my manners? I half joked. So what you been up to lately Lelich? I haven't heard from you in nearly 30 years. Ishin Fukutaiko said to me. Oh not much, just being a productive member of the research bureau. Yourself? Other than the fact that you're a vice captain now? I asked. Well Shisato and I have been having a thing going on between us recently. Yolanda moved to the 2nd Division about a year after Luska Teiko took the reins. Our relationship kind of fell apart after that. Ishin Fukutaiko told me. How's Vera doing? I asked. I was making real progress with her before I left the division. Quiet as a mouse. She still won't speak to anyone. She got herself to 17th seat though. I don't know what's wrong with that girl. Ishin Fukutaiko slapped his neck. Maybe you can talk some sense into her. You seemed like you were able to understand her before Homura transferred you. I suppose I did at that. I agreed. Jared unfortunately got himself Kia on a mission 14 years ago, poor guy. Well, we're soldiers and at any times our lives can be compromised, such as the terms we agreed to when we became Soul Reapers. I said. Geez, that's dark, Lelich. Ishin Fukutaiko stated. Targus got on my nerves a lot, what can I say? I joked. No need to justify yourself. Ishin Fukutaiko told me. Not really much else to say really. Pires was transferred to 1st Division and Jowlin's still with us, his position hasn't changed. Let me make my own query then. I said. A little over 20 years ago a Matsumoto Rangiku joined your division. She was my student and also someone I knew before I came to Rokanga. Know anything about her? Do I know anything? Ishin Fukutaiko got really fired up, causing me to wonder what exactly I said. Lelich, how is you know such a gorgeous woman like that and didn't tell your old buddy Ishin? Gorgeous woman? Rangiku? She's a child, isn't she? I haven't seen her since she was at the academy. She was a child back then. What? Oh man, you have to see what she looks like now. Follow me. Ishin Fukutaiko grabbed my arm and practically dragged me to see Rangiku. Wait, I bruise easily. I vocalized. Hold on. Just what's the urgency? We finally stopped after a few minutes of my being led by the arm. Ishin Fukutaiko pointed and shouted. That's the urgency. If I hadn't been told beforehand that I was looking at Rangiku, I wouldn't have believed it. When I last saw Rangiku, she was just a small child, no bigger than I was when I used to live with Suzaku, but now she was a full-grown woman. I remember what she told me when we first met. She was right, she did used to be bigger, though she neglected just how big. If Millie were here, she'd be demanding size comparison. I thought to myself. Something tells me it's possible she'd lose too. Besides just her Shiakusho, Rangiku was wearing a chain necklace dangling down her front, the end of it seeping into her cleavage. Her hair now went down a bit beyond her shoulders, but only in the back, and she was wearing pink neck cloth. Go on, Ishin Fukutaiko pushed me, reintroduce yourself. I stumbled forward and nearly lost my balance. I looked back at Ishin Fukutaiko, who gestured that I move towards Rangiku, and then he gave me a wink and a thumbs up. Well, she is an old friend, and it's not like I have anything better to do right now. I got close enough to her and cleared my throat. She turned to look at me. She squealed in joy at seeing me. Now there's a face I haven't seen in quite a long time. How are you, sensei? Please, Rangiku, you're a model member of the Godei now. Just call me Lelich-kun like you used to. I told her. Oh, I know that, there's no need for formalities between friends. She ran towards me and hugged me, very happy to see me. It surprised me that I was still taller than she was. She let me go and kept her elbows bent with her hands on my shoulders. Wow. You don't look like you've aged a day, Lelich. Or maybe you have and I'm just not noticing. Maybe I'm just one of the lucky few who get to keep their youth. What in the world happened to you though? I asked, now having a perfect view of Rangiku's very attractive body. If I had known she would turn out like this, no, even then we'd probably still be just friends. She let go of my shoulders and put one hand on her hip. Well, a couple of decades changes a person even in the Soul Society. I look good for a teenager, don't I? Teenager? I asked. She's still in her teens. With that body? How old do you look according to the records? Rangiku tilted her head and put a finger to her cheek. Last time I had my physical, I think I was told I looked 19. After hearing that, I completely lost my touch of focus with reality for a few moments. I just started staring off into space, straight at Rangiku. I could hear my heartbeat in my head. Lelich, Lelich. What, sorry. Rangiku completely snapped me out of my daze. What happened? She asked, confused. You just sort of spaced out all of a sudden and your cheeks are all red. What? I began furiously wiping my face in my sleeve. Damn you teenage hormones. So what have you been up to? Are you still working at the academy? Rangiku asked me. Actually no, I've been doing work for the Department of Research and Development ever since you graduated. I told Rangiku. You know, I always wondered how I ended up in your class every year. Rangiku commented. You did? I asked, curious. Rangiku waved her arms in front of her. Oh, no, don't get me wrong, you were a great teacher, but... She titled her head and looked at the sky again. I don't know, I always just thought it was weird. I mean, there are a lot of Kido teachers. She looked at me with a beaming smile. I actually always considered myself lucky I had you as a teacher. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. When I got my act back together, which didn't take very long, I said, oh come on, I was completely rough on you and the other students. You probably hated me. Not true. Rangiku got pent up. You were a really good teacher. Your strictness was a sign that you cared. You wanted to see us succeed. I've made good use of what you taught me too. I can do a Rakyukoro and Sakasui combo without a chant at all. Very impressive. I complimented. Child's play compared to me or advanced student, but for a beginner that's not too shabby. So, have you always been in the 10th division all this time? I asked. Rangiku nodded with a bright smile. I've gotten really high too. She flexed her right arm. I already have my Shikai and I'm a 10th seed. Well, sounds like the student has surpassed the master. I complimented. Really? What seed are you? Rangiku asked me. Only a 13th. I replied. Seems like you have some catching up to do. Rangiku pointed with her thumb and index finger and winked. Yeah, I know, my captain's a sadistic freak though, what with all his highly classified experiments. Honestly, what does he have to do keep hidden from the rest of the squad? Urahara-san never kept secrets from the rest of us. Maybe that was so no one would think he was a traitor, you know. Rangiku said solemnly. I looked over my shoulder. I wasn't going to say anything. I couldn't trust anyone with the truth, not even Rangiku, especially with this Hinfuku Taiko in earshot. Hey, what do you say we go grab a bite to eat? Rangiku asked me. I don't know, Rangiku, I mean I still have work to do. Well, not really, but I can't waste my entire day playing catch up with someone I know, can I? Oh, did you come all the way here on an assignment? Rangiku asked. If you did, I think Hinfuku Taiko is over there. She pointed to where Hein was. Ah, no, that's okay, why don't we get something to eat? I gave in. Why does she have accidental ways of screwing up my fibs? I had lunch with Rangiku, she treated me, said it was to pay her back for 6 years of good education. When we sat down we started up our conversation anew. So, why 10th division? I asked her. Well, they didn't have a captain and they still don't. I figured it wouldn't be that hard to work here. Even with this Hinfuku Taiko leading the squad I still don't get assigned a lot work. He's really nice to me. Iin Tamashi. Yes, Lelich. Take a note and don't forget this, if I ever find out that Hein is intimate with Rangiku, remind me to geese them apart if I don't plan to already do so. So noted. You know I used to be a part of 10th division. I told Rangiku. So I've heard. Rangiku responded. You sort of left your mark here. A bunch of the veteran squad members have talked about you. What did they say? I asked. Nothing bad. Everyone here talks about how you tactfully led the former vice-captain Homura Yuna and a bunch of other seated officers to victory against a bunch of Julian despite the fact that you were a greenhorn at the time. Rangiku answered. Ah yes, I gloated, my greatest tactical victory ever. Rangiku laughed and picked up her water glass. To Lelich, the tactical genius. Cheers. I said holding up mine and we clanged glasses before drinking. You know there's a bet running around the division. Rangiku said. What's that? I asked. Well, those that know you from when you were here are wondering whether Yuna will come back first or if you'll take over the division and learn Bankai. My mouth turned up and I smiled like I did the several times I always would when I just hatched an ingenious plan. Interesting. So, the 10th division has high support of me, does it? If Yuna doesn't come back before I learn Bankai, I sure know which division I'm taking captaincy of. Lelouch, at the rate you're going your sister's grandkids will have tombstones by the time you become captain. Haha, very funny. Right, so what would you do if you had to call me Lelouch Teiko all the time? I asked Rainjiku. Are you flirting with me, Lelouch? Rainjiku asked me, rather bluntly too. Where did that come from? I asked. I hadn't even meant it like that. What are you getting so hysterical for? I was just asking. Rainjiku said innocently. Oh wonderful. I thought, sitting down. Now I've really gone and done it. What in the world is wrong with me around her? Lelouch, are you okay? Rainjiku asked. I'm fine, why? I asked. 'Cause you just put your sleeve in your marinade. She said. What? I looked down. In my absent-mindedness I had put my sleeve right into the juices that had been excreted from my steak lunch. Oh, that's just perfect. I put my hand to my face. Get it together, Lamp Rouge. I scolded myself. Rainjiku was about to say something when we both heard. Attention captains and vice-captains of the Godi I-13, please report to the Squad 1 barracks for an emergency meeting. I got up from my seat. Kuratsuka Teiko's probably going to want me to oversee his experiment if I know him well enough. Even if he doesn't, it's the perfect opportunity to make a few, unnoticeable changes. Lelouch, where are you going? They said captains and vice-captains. Rainjiku inquired. My captain was working on an experiment before he came here that no one else, but the two of us are privy to, at least to my knowledge. Someone needs to look over it while he's at this captain's meeting. Oh, and here I was enjoying your company. Rainjiku moaned. I'll be back another time. I told her. Why in the world did I just say that? You better not make me wait 30 years. Rainjiku said to me. Don't worry. I'll try to make my visits more frequent. Really, what the hell am I saying? I left Rainjiku and went back to my division. When I returned to the lab, though, Captain Kuratsuka's door was locked with a note, "Enter and die," placed upon it. I looked over to Akon, who was working nearby. Akon, is the captain still in there? I asked. He locked it on his way out, said he didn't want anyone going in the lab. Akon responded. Where have you been anyway? Oh, here and there. I said, sitting down at my desk. What do you think the big meeting's about? I wanted to know. Who knows? But whatever it is, something tells me we're about to. There was suddenly violent banging on the door. Hello. It was a young voice. Lamperouge-sensei, are you in there? I recognized the voice immediately. It was Byakuya. I opened the door. I'd seen Byakuya from time to time. He hadn't changed like Rainjiku had, not all that much anyway. He was a little taller now and his voice had deepened, but he was still, more or less, a kid. He was in tears. Byakuya-kun, what's the matter, what's wrong? I asked. Ota-san, he's... Wait a minute, emergency captain's meeting, Byakuya's distraught, there's only one logical conclusion I can come to. I'm sorry, Byakuya-kun. There's something you can do though, right? Byakuya-kun asked me. Come on, sensei, you're the smartest person I know. You can do something, right? Right. I looked down at him with sympathetic eyes. I'm sorry, Byakuya-kun, but there's nothing that can be done. Byakuya entered a state of despairing shock and tumbled into me. With his grandfather at the meeting and his mother having passed away 7 years ago from an illness, I was the closest thing Byakuya-kun had to a family. He always knew he could count on me. He respected and looked up to me. Byakuya-dono. Hisuna came bursting into the lab. She looked out of breath. I just heard the news. Hisuna told him. Byakuya turned to look at Hisuna, there were still tears in his eyes. Hisuna. He sniffed. She held her arms out to him and she welcomed him into them. He cried into her arms. Poor kid. I know. I responded to Iin Tamashi. I had met Byakuya's parents the several times I had met them when Byakuya had invited me over for dinner while I was still his teacher. They were nice people. They were much better than my parents were, that was for sure. I became reminiscent of when Byakuya's mother passed away. I had been asked by Kukakifu Kotaiko to attend the funeral, if not for the family's sake then for Byakuya's. However, Byakuya grieved much less than his father did. I think he was trying to be strong that time. He held back his tears because his dad was despaired enough for the both of them. Now however, Byakuya had no one to need to be strong for. Both his parents were gone. No child should have to go through that, not when their parents were as good as people as Byakuya's parents. I remembered how upset I was when I lost my mother and how all my father did was deport me to Japan along with Nunnally. Although I later found out everything was all a sham and a humongous gamble the two of them set up, at the time I probably felt just as empty and broken down as Byakuya was feeling right now. My mother had been my world. She had been taken from me and I blamed my father for not protecting her. Byakuya's situation was different. Kukakifu Kotaiko was a soul reaper, much like we all were. We were soldiers. We could die at any time. We could give our lives so that others could live in our stead. I attended Kukakiso Jun's funeral. After the ceremony, Byakuya stood over his father's grave. I stood next to him, while his grandfather spoke with the attendees. Tell me why. He said coldly. Why are both of my parents dead? Byakuya asked. I was supposed to live under their guidance until my grandfather stepped down as head of the family so that my father could take his place. My mother was supposed to nurture me until I could take my father's place. Why is this happening? I didn't know what to say. I wasn't the best at cheering people up. I took a deep breath and thought about what I was going to say before speaking. Sometimes the plans we lay out for ourselves don't always go as we plan for them. The only thing we can do is move forward. It's not use clinging to the past and it's no use standing in one fixed spot in time never moving forward. The best thing one can do, when something like this happens, is move forward and embrace the future. Is that what you did, sensei? Byakuya asked me. Did you embrace the future? Yes. I said. Then that is what I will do as well. Byakuya responded. You don't have to start now though. I told him. It's never a good idea to let your feelings haul up inside you. You should move forward when you're ready. I have to be ready. Byakuya lifted his head up. For my family's sake I need to move forward. After all, Byakuya about face and began to walk away. I must be prepared for the day that could quite possibly come when Ji-san dies. I just watched Byakuya walk away. I couldn't say anything else to him. There was no need. As I watched Hisuna walk over to him and comfort him, I knew that he'd be just fine. I returned to my division later that evening. Akon was still up. Oh, senpai, he said to me, when he noticed me. A member of the Onmitsukido stopped by earlier. They had a letter for you, but you weren't around. Yuna. Where is it? I asked. On your desk. Akon told me. I opened the letter. Dear Lelich. We heard the news way out here about what happened to Kukakiso Jun. The Gotei is really starting to fall apart from the sound of things. The investigation to track Hashima was called off yesterday. It's gone completely cold. However, I cannot return, not yet. There is something I must do, something important. However, I will be back. I have sent a letter to the head captain besides your own. In 3 years, on this date, go to the Squad 1 barracks. Do not forget. Very truly yours. Yuna. What does this mean? I wondered. Yuna, just what are you trying to? Check the description for the links to the author.